us.
Good morning everyone, or who knows, maybe good night. When I make these longer guides, I try to make them last, so you might be watching this in the far-flung future where day and night are already dated concepts. Women are walking around with cybernetic bodies, for some reason very organic looking tits, but also chainsaws attached to their forearms. Speaking of which, I would like to teach you about Alisa in this video. I'm only going to make these longer guides for characters that I have a sort of intimate relationship with. I think you can make a very decent primer guide for any character in Tekken, provided that you have a basic understanding of the game. But to really get under the skin of a character and sort of go a little bit more in depth, I think that can take quite a lot of mileage. But unfortunately I have a sort of intimate relationship with Alisa, and I'm not talking about the weekend we spent together in Amsterdam either. She's kind of my first real main character in a fighting game. When I was first learning Tekken, I was maining Alisa, and so it's very possible that the first real block punisher that I sort of understood and applied successfully in a game was this 1-1. So I have an emotional connection to the character. She's special to me, and so it's going to be my pleasure to teach you everything I've been able to learn about how to play her in this video. Some housekeeping. This is going to be one of my longer guides, which means that it's going to have a lot of information. So there will be time codes in the description if you want to go to a specific section and learn about something in particular. Also in the description will be any corrections I might need to make. There's so much information, so many numbers in these videos that even though I'm going to try and make no mistakes, if there are any, I will put corrections down there. And so if you find something that sounds wrong, look it up and maybe I will already have corrected it down there. But with that out of the way, I think we should jump into the material, and we have a lot to talk about. I want to start out by talking about what kind of a character you're dealing with, just archetype, general strategy, and stuff like that. You'll see right there, by the way, that her backdash is very good, and maybe we should start talking about that. Backdash cancelling with Alisa is important, so teach yourself how to do that if you haven't already. But she's a very defensive character, and she has very good movement. We spoke about Miguel, how he's referred to as a poking character, even though that might not necessarily be true, because he uses his very good pokes to enable more powerful aspects of his character, such as the savage dance. But with Alisa, you might actually be more of a sort of true poke-based character, because while your pokes are very good, above average, they have kind of a large disadvantage on block a lot of the time, meaning that it's difficult for you to stay aggressive if your opponent is blocking, and so that means that you're typically trying to collect small chunks of damage and then backing out and staying mobile. You have really good sideways movement as well, and so you're establishing life advantages or health bar advantages with these small pokes, and then trying to chill a lot of the time, which is something that is difficult to adjust to if you're used to playing more aggressive characters. When I'm playing Miguel, I need to remind myself that I should stay more aggressive than I would usually be comfortable with, because that is something that Miguel really flourishes with in the new version of Tekken, in Tekken 7 Season 2 especially. With Alisa, I conversely have to calm myself down and remind myself that it's maybe a good idea to stay out here and just chill for a little bit and not necessarily be the one who opens up the exchange every single time. Maybe it's better to just try and watch your opponent and gain some good information on them. And then collect these small deliberate hits when you get the opportunity to. You have good and powerful combos, even though they can be a little bit awkward, so you don't necessarily specialize in combos and fast aggressive tools like counter hits, but more on these smaller deliberate chunks of damage. You also happen to have one of the really good full crouch mix-ups of the game, and we're going to talk about all of that later. But I think one testament to the fact that Alisa is a more defensive character is that when you look at the best Alisa players in the world playing in tournament, it's quite common for the clock in the round to run out when somebody's playing Alisa, and that is because one player is really trying to turtle up a lot of the time and not necessarily engage as much as you usually would. And so I think that's an indication that it's true that with Alisa, trying to stay calm and trying to stay very deliberate with one attack and then another, and not necessarily just letting the offense rip is a very good way of strategizing with her. But above average movement, above average range, decent keep out, good homing moves. Overall, the only thing she might lack a little bit in the defensive department is strong whiff punishment. She has good stuff like, a hop kick and a down for 2. Those lack a little bit of range, and then the back 3+4, which is the long range whiff punisher that you have, is a tad on the slow side, but she can definitely whiff punish quite well. Her block punishment is strong too, which is important for a defensive character. So I would recommend her to almost anybody. She's easy to execute with, so you can use her if you're. She's going to teach you a lot of important things about fundamentals, but she can obviously be played at the highest competitive level in the world as well. So such a fantastic character, a character that everybody should try. And I think in Season 2 she's actually better than she's ever been. She's steadily been improving since she was first introduced. Kind of a low tier character in Tag 2, but right now in Tekken 7 Season 2, I think she's very solid, sort of a solid mid-tier character that anybody can enjoy on any competitive level and at any level of skill. So what a great character. I think that's going to do it for my little introduction, and I want to jump into your actual move list and start talking about how to attack with this character now. So I think we're going to make a quick cut here, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. So thank you for watching this far. I'll see you guys in the next section. Let's jump into Alisa's move list by talking about her block punishment. This is a section where Alisa excels, and I think that's really good. We've mentioned already that she is a very defensive playstyle character, and having a good block punishment ties straight into that. It's a very important part of that kind of a character. I think we should start by talking about standing 10 frames and then work our way up from there. So for standing 10 frames, you first of all have the 1-2, which is a bog standard jab string that doesn't really do anything too impressive. The damage is also kind of low. It's -2 on block and +4 on hit, so the frame data is decent but unremarkable. And so I don't really recommend this for a Punisher. You have better options, but this is a very good little poke string when you want jabs for just, hitting people and not necessarily for specifically punishment. It has 2 extensions, the 1-2-2, which is a low, can be charged up, turning it into a full launcher, but that's very gimmicky, only gets used on very rare occasions. And then the other extension is the 1-2-4, which is the version of your standing 4. As you'll notice, both of these options are dealt with by crouching, meaning that you don't really have a great mix-up here, and I don't think that the extensions are very remarkable, but you can throw the 4 out every once in a while to try and get a nice little wall splat at the wall. But for punishment, I think this jab string is actually quite weak, but you do have a much better option in the shape of your 1-1. Very good Alisa move. This gives you an above average 25, which I think is very decent. I think that's quite far above average for a 10 frame in this game. And it also has better frame data. It has a -3 on block, but you shouldn't really worry about the -3 on block because you're applying it as a block punisher almost exclusively, meaning that it's never going to get blocked as long as you are applying it correctly. If you are getting blocked with this move, you should not worry about the -3 for one more reason. That reason being that the second hit of this is a reactable and duckable high, meaning that you can get launched for using this for anything apart from block punishment. So it's very clearly supposed to be specifically a punisher and nothing else, but it fulfills that role very satisfyingly. And it has another really powerful and great aspect to it, which is that it's one of the best moves that you have for transitioning into your destructive stance. You can press 1+2 after 1-1, and that will transition into destructive stance with substantial plus frames, because you're at +5 on hit when applying this Punisher. So even if you don't want to go into destructive stance, that's fine. Just be aware that you have those +5. I think it's a very, very good standing 10 frame Punisher, and I would recommend it over the normal 1-2 almost every time. Moving on to standing 12 frames, you have the very good 2-4, new move for Alisa in Tekken 7 as far as I can remember. This is exactly what you want for a good 12 frame block punisher. 12 frame block punishers see a lot of usage in this game because there's a specific move known as a hop kick, which is an archetype that will usually get punished at 12 or 13. And those moves see a lot of use and also see a lot of blocking when they get applied. So it's really good to have something fast here for those minus 12 or 13 situations where you can not only get a good damage and a knockdown, but a powerful wall splat as well. The fact that you have a 12 frame wall splat punishing move means that your opponent is limited in their options at the wall, because they definitely don't want to get something punishable blocked and then have to eat a full wall combo. So I think this is very good. The 2 by itself looks a little slow and awkward, but it is definitely solid. It is there. It has enough range that it works, even though it's not massive. So I think this is a very good option. What a fantastic addition to Alisa. She kind of needed a slightly better block punishment than maybe she had before, in my opinion. This used to be even stronger, by the way, but I think this is a very welcome addition to her. So it's very cool, but it's your optimal option for 12 frames, so it's also all I'm going to give you right there for now. If you do need a mid, let's mention the other one. If you do need a mid, you have a fish hook for 12 frames, which is amazing. It's, you know, almost no damage, but it's got decent frame data. We're going to talk about this move in a different section in depth because it's a very important move. But it's if you absolutely want a mid for the 12, then you have the option of down forward 4 for the fish hook. Moving up to 13, you have your standing 4, which is weaker than the 2-4, but has slightly better range. If I reset my positioning to range 1 here at the beginning of the round, you can see that the 4 is going to hit, while the 2-4 is going to whiff. So you can use this for its range at 13, but it's also just a very solid, fast move. 24 damage, a knockdown, homing property, wall splat, of course. Just a very good go-to punishment option for when you might be confused about exactly what you want to do for the Punisher. But it's just a really good option. It sends them flying away to Alisa's left, which makes it even more interesting for wall splatting scenarios when the wall is to Alisa's left, because you can do stuff like that and then get a spin. And keep on going. So that's a very good move. It has counter properties that we're going to talk about in a different section as well. Moving up to 14, it's going to get very interesting when you realize that Alisa is one of the fortunate few characters in this game who can launch her opponent at 14 frames. When you get a 14 frame launcher in a game like this, or in this game I should say, it usually comes with some sort of stipulation or requirement, because it's normally faster than what a standard launcher should be. They usually start at 15. So for example, with Paul you get very awkward range. With the Mishimas you get execution heavy launchers. With Alisa you have very easy execution and very good range, but the combo you can do after this becomes quite awkward. As you can see, the launcher by itself, which is forward 3-2 by the way, is the input for this 14 frame launcher. It spins on the actual launcher on the second hit right there, and it forces you into destructive stance with chainsaws, severely limiting your options for the follow-up. But you can get a decent damage combo here. The move by itself is -4, so it is safe, which is fantastic. Obviously, the big danger here being that you are duckable on the second hit, so you need to be aware of that. You have a mid mix-up in the shape of forward 3-1+2, so that actually improves the move quite a bit in my opinion, because it makes it so much less likely to get ducked if you are mixing in the mid option. But if we're just talking about block punishment, at 14 you can do this, and the entire combo is going to look like that. So what this is you launch with forward 3-2, then you do forward 3+4 in destructive stance. This transitions into a stance where she's flying with chainsaws. This is known as dual boot, and then you do dual boot 2-1, which is that move, which has very good damage and basically becomes the combo. So you can call this a full combo, or you can just call it a very long, elaborate and powerful block punisher if you prefer, but 58 damage is exceptional. I've talked about before how I think 14 is the sort of no man's land for block punishers. It's not a very good number because Well, there are many reasons, but I think it's probably the least useful standard frame data for a Punisher. But when you can get something as powerful as this, I think you definitely should try and be aware of when you can get that 14, because it's so much better than your alternatives, you know, things like this. It's such a difference in power and damage that you should try and capitalize on that 14 when you can. You could even use this for above 14 if you wanted to, because it's got better range than a lot of your other standard launchers. The last thing you need to be very aware of when it comes to this move, however, is that if you find yourself near the wall in a situation like this, the combo is obviously not going to work, and so you need to do something else. Maybe in a situation like this, it could be a good idea to, for example, just punish with a 2-4 and try and get that wall splat, but maybe you could also do stuff like conceivably that, and you can get a little chainsaw wall combo. You can convert this in a couple of interesting ways, but you don't get the full 58 damage combo at the wall, so that's another sort of you know, prerequisite or limitation to this launcher to make up for the fact that it is such a fast move. This is you know, the fastest launcher you have, and an amazing move overall. Alright, let's keep going. Let's talk about 15, which is where you find... no, one more thing we need to talk about with forward 3-2, by the way. I don't have any other section to sort of stick it in, so I thought we might talk about it here because it's a fun, interesting thing. You have this move, down back 2-2. If we remove all guard on Lars here, down back 2-2, you can see the second hit causes a nosebleed stun. Lars will put his hands up on his face and stagger backwards. That is a breakable stun. It's one of the many different kinds of sort of breakable stun situations you'll see in Tekken, meaning that he doesn't have to do that whole thing, but if he doesn't know how to break it, if they don't know how to get out of this properly, you get so much advantage here that the forward 3-2 becomes a guaranteed combo. And the entire combo, when you do get this, is completely insane. It's like, yeah, 88 damage, so it's basically half their life bar. If you're able to hit with this non-natural string, and they don't break the nosebleed stun, which is a lot of, you know, pre-requirements, of course, you can actually get a completely guaranteed forward 3-2. And I think that's cool enough and fun enough, and feels amazing when you can get it to work, that it deserves to be mentioned. But I don't really have any other section where it makes sense to stick it in, so I thought I'd talk about it here. So there you go. Next, 15 frames for standing. You get your first, in air quotes, real launcher in the shape of your up forward 4-4, which is your hop kick. This is a decent but not amazing hop kick. It's very good for its combo and its damage. You get very powerful stuff when you hit with this, so it's definitely good for that. Probably that it's a little bit limited in its range. It's not quite as bad as Kazumi, but it's also not quite as good as Katarina. So it's kind of somewhere in between there, I guess. And the other thing to note, yeah, you can see at range 1 it's actually going to whiff where your 4 will reach, for example. And the other thing about this move is that you'll see that it's one of these 2-hit hop kicks, kind of like Katarina's. For Katarina, because I think she kind of specializes in keeping a very high tempo and confusing the opponent, that can be quite good because the opponent can get trigger happy, press a button in between the 2 hits, and even though they block the first one, get launched by the second one. But with Alisa, that doesn't really happen. In my experience, if you get this blocked on the first hit, all it means is that your opponent has plenty of time to react to exactly what they're blocking, and they can apply a very appropriate and deliberate block punisher. And that's bad for this move, because on block it forces full crouch, and it forces your opponent to, or it forces Alisa to -13. She's at -13 on block. And if you are an experienced Tekken player, then you hear forced crouch -13. You already have red lights and bells and whistles and alarms going off in your head. But I'll give you a second here to guess why that's really, really bad. And now I'm going to tell you that it means that depending on your matchup, you will occasionally be launch punishable for applying this move. When you're fighting against characters like Josie Rizal or Kazuya, they can actually launch you for getting this move blocked. And so for your main standard launcher, that is kind of important, meaning that when you are playing against a character who has the ability to launch this, you cannot hallelujah hop kick as a strategy, which is, you know, a bootleg strategy that works, you know, in all levels of play. Sometimes you can just do a hop kick because it's a relatively fast mid, it's got the low crush and everything else. It can just work, and it's going to lead to a lot of damage when it does, of course. So you can't do that. You need to know exactly when you want to use this hop kick when you're fighting against those characters. But apart from that, it can be applied as normal, and it can actually be an advantage in some cases to force them into full crouch. Maybe they are one of the characters who really cannot punish well from full crouch. So it's matchup dependent, but the hop kick itself is decent and you get good damage. So there you go. I want to give you one more option for 15, because the hop kick, like I say, has limited range, and in Season 2 I have a new favorite option for what I want to do when the hop kick isn't going to reach, or I want to do something just chunky with a bit more range, which is the new and improved back 4-3. Back 4-3 is a 37 damage move in Season 2, which is very powerful. It's completely natural, which is great as well. And another really good thing about this is it's exactly how much was it? I think it's +6. Yeah, this is +6 on hit. +6 on hit is very good. 37 damage is very good. The range is great, even though it's not super massive, but about right here I think it starts whiffing. A little bit more. Right there, yeah, you can see. So the range is much better than the hop kick. And it gets even better because +6, and then you have the option of getting the chainsaws out, meaning that you're accessing one of your mix-up stances, the destructive stance, with a massive amount of plus frames, which is great. So if you feel that the hop kick might not be optimal for the situation that you're in, then consider this. And this can be used for above 15 as well, of course, when you need something big and chunky. It's also going to be one of your main floor break options in combos, and I also really like it as a spike move in wall combos. We should talk about that later, but you can spike them and then go for Oki with stuff like Alisa's missile stomp, which looks like, let's see if we can make that happen. Go to the wall right here. Maybe something like this, and then yeah, the missile stomp like that, for example. That's a different section. Okay, that's 15, and then for 16 you get another launcher in the shape of your down 4-2. Not down 2, down 4-2. There it is. This is a very good move for Alisa for a lot of reasons. It should be mixed in your normal standard poking game because it's a decent range mid at 16 frames, reasonably fast, and it's a completely safe launcher, which is great. It's -9, so you have to chill on block, but you're not going to get punished. And the reason you would use this over the hop kick, because the hop kick is the more powerful launcher, is that, again, if you look at range 1 right here, the hop kick whiffs, but the down 2 doesn't, so you have slightly better range. But I like this after a sidestep. I like this for keep out. I like it for a lot of reasons. It's just a fantastic move for you. And even though the combo isn't massive, it's more than enough that it's very respectable. So a great move to keep in mind. And when you need 16 and some range, it's going to be a very good option for you. And then for 17 frames, which is the last one I'm going to give you if you need a long range option for pushback and stuff like that, you have the new and improved 4-2-1. 4-2-1 has really great range. 4-2 by itself is fantastic. It's a good mid poke, even though it is on the slow side. It gives you a massive +7 on hit, and it can give you chainsaws, which is so great. And then it has this new natural extension, which is the 4-2-1. So a completely natural for natural combo. You can chase them on the ground with the destructive stance down 1. But if you're dealing with pushback moves and you're kind of all the way out here, it will still work for you. It has better range than you might suppose, so it's a very good punisher as well for those situations where you need specifically range, which you sometimes lack with this character. Is that everything I want to give you for standing punishment? I think so. Next, we should talk about while standing block punishment, which is slightly less powerful for Alisa. Not quite as good as your normal standing punishment, but it's not bad. The while standing 4 is, however, kind of bad. It's your 11 frame. It's all you have. I mean, it's a very standard to just get a while standing 4 like this, but you can see that Alisa's is 15 damage, which is below average, I think. Yeah, in a game where you have stuff like, you know, tsunami kicks from Kazumi and while standing for 1+2 from Leo and stuff, this is definitely below average, I think. It's a very reliable mid apart from its low damage, though. The range isn't massive, but it's got nice, floaty, reliable properties. It's just a mid to get out of full crouch. Works wonders in combos and so on. But it's all you have here. So you are a little bit weak in the legs. And if your opponent has abusable combos for 11 and 12, because this is really all you get for 12 too, or for 12 as well. Let's not say 2 because it sounds like the number 2, which might get you confused about notations. But it's all you have for 11 and 12, meaning that if they have good low pokes that are minus 11 and 12, then yeah, you're kind of weak in the legs and they can abuse that, which is unfortunate for you. At 13, you get while standing 1-2, which is 21 damage, still not massive. But it's decent. This should, similar to your 1-1, only be used for block punishment because the second hit is reactable and duckable. It's a high. So this is specifically a punisher. You have a third extension, which is the 3, and let's put all guard back on here so that you can see when the strings aren't natural. And this is a mid launcher that is quite powerful, but it's slow, it's kind of not great, so you can try to catch people with it, but I don't really think it's very good. Most of the time you're doing the 1-2 by itself. But a really good buff to this move is that it gives you +6 on hit, which is great, and it gives you chainsaws. So it's another great option where you can get into chainsaws with plus frames off of a fast block punisher, and destructive stance is becoming stronger for Alisa in the new season, so I think that's significant and very cool. You can also do while standing 3-3 for 38 damage and one of those spinny knockbacks, which can wall splat, which we should demonstrate. While standing 3 by itself goes into this awkward stance known as clockwork for Alisa. It's not very good. I don't think I'm going to do a section on it because it's so fringed, but it basically has the option of doing a 3, which is if you charge it up, a mid launcher, or the down 3, which is a low launcher. But it's a slow and awkward stance. You can, however, just tap the 3-3 instantly to make it a natural 38 damage combo. So it's a very decent option as well. I would probably elect to go, if I'm not near the wall, for the +6 and chainsaws right here, but that's up to you. Then for 15 from while standing, you have to do full crouch hop kicks for your launch because you don't have access to a 15 frame while standing launcher. But you do have the hop kick to make up for that, so that's kind of fine. Unless you're in case you're unaware, when you're in full crouch, if you do an up forward notation like a hop kick, that is going to cancel your crouch, so you can use this move from full crouch just fine. When you need specifically 15 or 16, that's what I recommend you use. And then you get your first, again, air quotes, real while standing launcher at 17, which is quite slow. It's the while standing 2. While standing 2 is powerful enough that you should use it when you are specifically at -17 or more. So you should use it over the hop kick when you have the option, provided that you're not too close to the wall. Alisa can struggle sometimes with clutch conversions to the wall because a lot of her combo tools like this stance and this down 3 travel really far and sort of lock her into limited options. But for now, the combo that you do have here is you want to do while standing 2, 3+4. And when you do while standing 2, 3+4, she automatically flies forward and goes into her boot stance. And then you're going to do a 3 right there, and then you can do a while standing move, a spin, get to the wall, do the dinosaur or whatever. But it's a very good launcher and it's powerful. But as you can probably imagine, if we go to the wall right now and we're kind of close to it, kind of like this, it becomes more difficult to do a combo because of the wall. So you need to convert somehow if you're going to use this launcher. Maybe just go for the hop kick in that scenario. That's your while standing block punishment. Is there anything else we should mention here? I think I've gone through basically everything that I think is significant, although I might not have talked about everything. Looking through my notes one more time here. Yeah, I think that'll do it for now. So we're gonna make a cut in the video, and the next section is gonna get really into the thick of it, because we're gonna start talking about your standard poking game, which is very important with this character. So I'll see you again after the cut. In this section, I want to talk about Alisa's standard poking game and all of her important attacks that she's going to use when she's close to her opponent, more or less. Very important. We've probably mentioned it many times already, but you are working with a very poke-heavy character, and so the moves that I'm about to describe, along with the lows that we're going to talk about a little bit later, are going to make up as much as about at least half, but probably a lot more, of everything you do with this character. And that holds up even if you look at top level Alisa play. You'll see the best players in the world keep on coming back to the same very basic pokes over and over and over, trying to stack those small chunks of damage on the opponent, establishing a life lead, and then backing out. So I think the first thing we should mention is that your one jab has very standard frame data for a normal one jab. It's +1 on block, +8 on hit, so it's sort of your stalemate breaker, a good way of opening up offense. I need to make a completely separate video where I talk about the power of the one jab move archetype, something that I feel is kind of misunderstood, but that's going to be a different video that I'll make someday. For now, just be aware that the one jab has those very good standard properties, and so is a useful and important poke. Next, I want to talk about your fish hook. You actually have a fish hook with Alisa. That is a generic term that I use for any 12 frame mid kick move. I think the original fish hook is a Feng move, if I'm not mistaken, but you have similar stuff on characters like Alisa and Chloe and so on. This is a 12 frame mid, which is significant because 12 frame mids are typically the fastest mids in the game. You can't really get faster than 12 frame mids in Tekken unless you're talking about very specific sort of exceptions to the rule. So that's your fastest mid poke. Now, the sort of trade-off for these moves being so fast is that they usually end up with not very fantastic frame data, and that means that you're going to use them mainly for interruption and not really for opening up offense necessarily. So you need something really fast to stop an opponent who's pressuring you. Maybe they're using a lot of ducking and crush moves, and you just need to get something quick in there to get some breathing room, maybe end the round. That's when you want to play a mid like this, and this is actually a fantastic version of such a mid. It might be the best one in the game, or one of them, definitely, because you have range. As you can see, you have great range, and the frame data is better than you might suppose. You're at -7, and you should expect to be at hefty minus frames after getting something like this blocked, but it's not -9 at least. And then you get a pretty healthy +4 on hit. +4 on hit, I think, is actually very respectable. So when you do score hits with this move, you can keep going with your offense and go straight into other more powerful stuff. So what a fantastic mid overall. Can apply it in a lot of different scenarios. End of the round, start of the round, really just a lot of different ways, and a standard mid for maybe some basic mix-up situations. It doesn't do powerful stuff, with its damage and whatever, but it is the fastest option that you have, and I think it should make up a sizable portion of your sort of mid-poking game. Next, let's move up to 13 frames with the down forward 1. If you watch my videos, you know that in Tekken, down forward 1 is my favorite notation, and I tend to play a lot of characters who specialize specifically in down forward 1 and good counter hit moves. It's true for Kazumi, it's true for Miguel, it's true for Katarina. They have very good counter hit, fast counter hit moves, and a very good down forward 1, and I use that interplay to set the counter hits up. But you can't really do that with Alisa in the same way, because this is not the sort of standard down forward 1 you might think it to be. It does have the 13 frames to impact, which is standard and good, very fast. It has a very good hitbox. It's longer range than you might expect. It's kind of low and floaty. It hits low to the ground, which is great. But it's -6 on block, which is pretty big. And so a normal down forward 1 like this, you might be looking at something like -2. And that's a big difference, because -2 means that you can keep on doing several of these. But with Alisa, you don't really want to. So that's very important to note. It's +5 on hit, which I think is very respectable. So that's a really good aspect of the move. So when you do get hits, you can use it as a normal down forward 1 and maintain offensive pressure. But along with the fishhook, you're going to have to use both. They're very good, but both moves have significant disadvantage on block, and so you're not the kind of character who necessarily stacks pokes one after another on block. It's more about, you know, doing one poke, maybe collecting a low, and then backdashing out, or something like that. She's more that type of a character. Patient, deliberate, one attack and then another, and not, you know, down for one, down for one, down for one kind of stuff. And so because I do down for one, down for one, down for one kind of stuff in a lot of my normal play with my main characters, I sort of have to calm myself down and slow the pace down when I play this character, because aggression isn't really her her strong suit, let's say. Next, let's talk about the extensions to your down forward 1, which are pretty interesting. You have down forward 1-4, which I think is the best extension that you have. It's a safe mid-mid string, which is great. It's not natural, as you can see right here, but it is completely safe at -9, and it gives you the same +5 on hit that you would get off of the down forward 1 by itself. That's very, very good. On counter hit, this becomes a natural combo, which is great, and you get 29, which I think is quite respectable. But half the time or more, when you do counter it with this, the counter hit is only going to happen like that on the second hit only, because your opponent is used to seeing the down forward 1 and mid pokes like this come up by themselves. Block it, know that you're at that pretty significant -6, try and do something, and get counter hit by the second hit. So that's one of the reasons that your down forward 1 manages to remain very useful, despite the fact that it has that -6 on block. And when you get the counter hit on the second hit only, it causes a knockdown like that, and then you can chase them on the ground with down back 3, which I think is the most powerful guaranteed option you have here, although I might be wrong. Don't try and go for like super big stuff, because you can get blocked and launched punished. But the down 3, as far as I've been able to test, is guaranteed right there. So that's very good. But this is a very decent little string, and something that's going to crop up a lot in your standard mid-poking game. And the extension is important to mix in, because it not only makes this down forward 1 by itself a lot safer and better on block, it also enables you to use another pretty powerful but gimmicky extension that you have here, which is the down forward 1-1-2. This string doesn't see a whole lot of usage in high-level play, but I honestly think it's underestimated and really quite powerful, and I like it. The second hit of this, the down forward 1-1, she spins a lot, meaning that it's telegraphed, and then she comes out with a duckable high. So that's why the 4 is important, because it's the mid that's going to kill people who are trying to find that high and duck it. But when the second hit, the high, connects, the final hit of the string, the chainsaw hit, if we can get that to happen, becomes a natural extension, and it's 48 damage, which is very big, much bigger than you would suppose for something fast like that. And another really cool thing about this is not only does it give you chainsaws, it's also massively plus on block. If this gets blocked, the chainsaw hit here, that's +6 on block, so you're +6, and you have chainsaws out, meaning that you can go straight into destructive mix-ups with stuff like down 1 and 1. And if you get the hit, you're at +8 and in chainsaws, which is even better. So as long as this second hit here, the high, doesn't get read and ducked, you're in very favorable positions going into destructive. And so I think for that reason, because of that very interesting advantage, and the fact that you get the destructive mix-up straight after, means that even though this looks like a very gimmicky and shitty string, I would keep it in mind, and I would actually consider throwing it out on occasion, especially if you happen to be playing in low ranks where people might not be, aware of frame data on characters that are less used, like Alisa. Then, go straight into this and then just party hard with Destructive, because they're going to get hit by everything after blocking that. Okay, enough about that. Next, I want to talk about really, I might call it Elisa's most important move. If I had to pick out one move that I think is the most iconic, most important thing that sort of ties the room together and that everything kind of rotates around with Alisa, I would probably say that it's her back one. I think this is probably your best mid. It's just such a fantastic move overall. It sees a lot of usage with this character for a couple of reasons. It sort of ties into a lot of your different strategies. So first of all, back one by itself is 15 frames to impact, which is very fast for the good properties that the move has overall. I'm just making sure that my microphone is switched on here, because it was switched off earlier and I had to re-record some stuff. But it's on, so you can hear me, I hope. 15 frames to impact, which is fast for this move. -5 on block, which is not that bad. +8 on hit, which is amazing, fantastic, really good. So you can see that you've got tracking with this move, you're ducking down and going under stuff with it, and you've got good range. So it's just a really good property package overall. Basically everything about this move is good. The -5 on block might hurt a little bit, but it's not terrible. So this is just a great move. And before I talk about how to strategize with this move, let's mention that it has an extension in the shape of back one, 1+2. She'll drop her head on the ground and then pick it back up, turning it into a powerful mid launcher. This is just a 1+2, and she does the 2 hits automatically. You can't just do the head drop. And the reason this can be ambiguously useful sometimes is that if you get a counter hit on the head drop move, then the launching extension becomes natural, meaning that it's a very powerful combo starter. As you can see right there, I just spun right away and I still got 49, so that's very good. Excuse me, I'm developing hiccups here after drinking too much coffee. But yeah, so this is a very gimmicky extension, but you can throw it on occasion, because the back one is so common for you and such a good move. They will be used to seeing this by itself, and then maybe they swing, maybe they get counter hit, and then they have to go for a ride. So it's not super terrible, but it's kind of terrible. Okay, why is back one so good when you're strategizing with it? Well, when you're in a spaced up position, you can use it for keep out. When you're up here, you can use it for a mid poke. But then really the most important part, in my opinion, is that this is a move that recovers in full crouch. And that would maybe be a little bit annoying if it wasn't for the fact that Alisa has a very good full crouch mix-up that we're going to talk about in its own section because of how important it is. But you want to get into full crouch with Alisa, and you especially want to get into full crouch with a very nice +8 that you get off of this on hit. So this transition here is absolutely fantastic, and then you're going to be mixing up your opponent from full crouch with stuff like that. So it's one of your main mid pokes, main keep out duels, and one of your main ways of accessing one of your main mix-ups, which is your full crouch mix-up. So it sort of ties into many different important aspects of your character and just has fantastic properties overall. So this mid is just an amazing move for you, and I think like if I had to pick out her best move sort of overall, maybe I would actually say this. I would definitely put it in the top 3 at least. I think it's very good. I mentioned your down for 2 in the punishment section, but I'll just say here that this is a -9 16 frame mid and combo starter. You can mix this into standard mid poking, and if you get lucky and get a hit, then it's a full combo, so it's definitely not bad. It works especially well after a sidestep, in my opinion. So I'll mention it in this section as well, because I think it's worth mixing in. Okay. Next, let's talk about 4-2. I think 4-2 is very good because it's one of your longest range mid pokes. It's got very decent range. It's 17 frames to impact, which is quite slow, but that is sort of compensated by the fantastic range that you have. This is +7 on hit, so again you have very good frames on hit with Alisa, but not necessarily very good frames on block. It's -4, which is not that bad, but the -7 becomes extra juicy when I tell you that you have the option of transitioning into destructive off of this, and a +7 and destructive is very, very good. You have a 1 extension here, which is a Punisher and a new natural combo for you. You can use it as a quick, not very quick, but sort of semi-quick with Punisher and block Punisher, which is very decent. So yeah, I like this move. I think it deserves to be used, and you can do stuff like get plus frames, go into destructive, and then sidestep and stuff works really well. Just do this by itself and sidestep works really well. So it's a move that can lead to offensive options, and it's really, really good. You see good players use this, especially into sidestepping, quite a lot. Okay, the the 4-2-1, by the way, is a -14 move, so you shouldn't be using it when it's not going to connect, because you're going to get punished. I'll mention another extension here, which is the 4-2-3-3. This is your wall bounce move, and I'll mention that in the wall section later. But when I talked about wall bounce in my video on wall bounce, I actually lifted this move out as one of the worst wall bounce moves in the game. I think it's very, very poor, and I'll stand by that statement, because to get the wall bounce you need to hit with a last hit of a 3-hit string, which is difficult enough. Now the saving grace of this move sort of is that if you counter hit with the 4-2, the entire string will become natural and allow you for the guaranteed wall bounce. But my sort of opinion on why wall bounce is weak is that the situation for the wall bounce to occur is a little bit too specific. The distance to the wall has to be quite specific. There has to be a wall in the first place. You have to be on a wall stage. You have to be near the wall on a wall stage at a sort of 90-degree-ish angle, and then now you have the added prerequisite, the sort of added condition that you need to counter hit with a 17-frame move, which is something that is difficult enough to do anyway. Like I said earlier, I kind of play a lot of counter hit characters. I kind of specialize in counter hit characters in Tekken a little bit, and I find that above 15 frames it becomes, or like around 16 frames, it can become quite difficult to set up counter hits. But with like 17 like this, yeah, it's going to be difficult to set up a good counter hit here and go for that wall bounce. So it's going to happen on very rare occasion, but when it does, it's powerful, I guess. So yeah, there you go. Okay, maybe leaving pokes behind, let's start talking about other really important close-up tools that you have that should be mentioned in the same section. Standing 4 is one of your main homing moves. It impacts at 13 frames and is -5. It causes wall splats, which is very good, and it has counter hit launch properties, which is not too shabby either. So I'll give you combos for that in a different section, but it's a very good, important, fast move. Duckable high, -5 on block, knockdown and homing. Really good at the wall, of course, for that homing wall splat. Back 3 is your sort of main counter hit move with Alisa, in my opinion, your main counter hit mid. And should be mentioned here that I don't think Alisa is much of a counter hit character. If you compare it to stuff like, you know, Miguel, who has all these super powerful like counter hit things already at 11, 12, you know, it just keeps on going. Alisa's not really specializing in that, but like I say, she's not that aggressive of a character, so that makes sense. But when you need a long range counter hit mid, you do have the option of this back 4, which I think is good. It's a 15 frame impact move, which is fast enough that it's going to work. I can show you the counter hit launch properties. Then you can do all kinds of stuff for your combo, which is fun. And the extension, the back 4 by itself is -13, so you might get this blocked and punished, but it becomes a little bit safer because of the 3 extension, which is buffed in its damage, just a very chunky 20 right now, so it's difficult for your opponent to confidently block this. So I think it's very decent. It's sort of your main counter hit mid. Very good tool, and because of the 15, it can be mixed into your standard mid game, and it's going to do its job there. Back 3 is another homing move that you need to be aware of. It's good for a lot of different reasons, but if you're going to mention a standing 4, we should mention back 3 as well. You see good players use this a lot. It has some mild evasive properties, and then it has very good range. It's a homing mid, it wall splats and knocks down, it does great damage at 26. But it also is completely safe on block at -8. What a fantastic move. You'll see a lot of good Alisa players use this as a round opener because of the mild evasive properties. It can evade some stuff, but it's also going to catch a lot of different options. Obviously, people are moving sideways, people are doing crush stuff and going into crouch right away and stuff like that because of the mid and the homing. So the property package is powerful overall, and it was recently buffed and turned into a spin move, meaning that it has some pretty fringe use, I'd say, in combos. I think this is supposed to work in the new season, which is weird. That does apparently work, but we're gonna do that in the combo section anyway. But back 3 by itself is a fantastic little move that I recommend you use. Next, let's mention your new and improved Power Crush, down forward 1+2. Down forward 1+2 is cool because it's got armor properties now. It's -14, so make sure that you do armor through something when you get it. Chase them on the ground with destructive stance down 1 on hit. The really cool thing about this move is that while it does go into destructive, they've now made it so that you can access the move from destructive as well. I think it might be the only move that you have access to from both destructive and non-destructive, and it's got armor properties in both cases, so it's a really cool and improved move. Alisa's other Power Crush is the back forward 2, which because of the back forward input does not really come out fast enough to be as useful as it might have been if it were, let's just say it was her forward 2. I think it would be very abusable, but it's a little bit more clunky because of that. And now that you have something a little bit more fast and on the fly for your armor move here, I think that's very, very good. I'm going to mention back to 4 here as well. Back to 4 is a natural combo and it gives you wall splats. It's got really good range, so I think this is a good move. But it is, while it is safe at -7, it is one of those duckable, you know, punch into kick spin moves that you see on Kazuya and Feng and so on. Dragunov and stuff like that. I think this is worse than those options though, because your mid mix-up is also punishable at -13. The mid mix-up is back to 1 for 29 damage. Natural, but not that powerful, and punishable. This is duckable, so it's not great, but this is decent for a quick little punish. I have used it mainly successfully at the wall, you know, getting something blocked, sidestep, and then fast back for 2, and then you can get a nice sidewall combo and stuff. So it's decent. Back to by itself looks like this, but I think in most cases you have better options. I think that's going to tie it up for the sort of standard close-up and poking game, what I want to talk about here. Next, I want to give you some lows, which is obviously very important. So we're going to move on to lows. I'll see you guys after the cut. Next, I want to talk about Alisa's low pokes and her other lows. I just want to say here quickly that if you can think of a very important Alisa low that I don't mention in this section, it's because that is probably because that's brought up in some other section. For example, I'm not going to talk about the down 3 here because I think that ties more naturally into when we're talking about spacing game. Same for stuff like boot stance 3. So everything that I think is important that is not covered in another section, I'm going to cover in this one. Mainly low pokes, of course, but I think I want to start a very interesting thing to note about Alisa's low game is that you don't have access to, a generic down 4. This is your down 4. Typically you would have some sort of generic looking high crush low here, but with Alisa you get this awkward toe kick, which is decent for its properties overall, but then it's -16 and launch punishable on block, so I don't think this is a very good low. If you're confident that it's going to hit, then you can use it. It should hit because it's 17 frames, which makes it completely unreactable. It doesn't give you a high crush, and I just think it's kind of awkward overall. It's not a favorite of mine. And I would probably have preferred if she just had a normal down 4 here, but this is what you have for your down 4. So if you're playing other characters that have, you know, more standard stuff on that notation, that's something that you're going to have to acclimatize to or get used to. So with that out of the way, yeah, let's mention that you have an extension here, which is the 1+2. Which is one of your main spin moves, of course. This has plus frames now. It is +2 on block, which is it +2? Yeah, it's +2 on block, but I don't think the +2 is super significant, and this move is also duckable, the high extension right here. So I heard a lot of talk about how Alisa is going to create all this amazing offense using this move right now, and I'm very sorry, I just don't see it, because this low by itself is launch punishable. This is only +2, and why would you know, you assume that you're just going to collect that +2 and your opponent isn't just going to duck it? It's not like you're mixing it with other stuff, really. So yeah, I don't really see this move for opening up offense. I think this is almost exclusively a spin move in combos and not really used for much else. So sorry about that, but I don't think this is a good offensive tool at all. Next, however, we're going to talk about a very good move, really your main low poke, and one of your most important moves overall. Again, if I had to make a list of top 3 moves, down back 3 would definitely be on that list. It's been an iconic and sort of signature move for Alisa for a long time, and it's seen its frame data messed around with back and forth. But it's going to remain your main low poke and one of your best lows in this version. Down back 3 is 16 frames to come out, meaning that it's lightning fast for a low. It's only -12 on block, which is so fantastic. It's so great that it's not -13, that you never have to worry about a launch punish here. Unless in some very, very fringe cases, of course. But you know, no standard while standing launchers like from Eddie is going to launch punish this. It crushes highs, it's got great range, it's got some mild tracking. You can use it for just an all-purpose, though. It's not going to give you massive damage, and it's not going to give you advantage on hit either. You're actually minus on hit at -1, which is kind of standard. It's not as bad as it sounds. It happens for a lot of lows like this. So it just needs to be said that you're not using this for offense, you're using this for defense, keep out, and when you're just poking up here, a lot of the time you collect the down back 3 before you back out, and then you get an extra, you know, 11 damage, which is good. So it's just for a harassment low, but it serves that purpose admirably. It's very, very good. Again, let's repeat the frame data: 16th impact, -12 on block, -1 on hit. And that's really it for your low pokes with Alisa. You have a crappy down 4 and then a very, very good down back 3. And so for a character who seems to specialize in pokes and has famously good low pokes, you'll see that her repertoire is really tiny. But it's really all about the down back 3. It's kind of the moral of the story. There is one more option, however, that has become better in the new season, which I think might be very interesting, and I think this should be experimented with. I would probably be using it a lot right now if I was playing a lot of Alisa. And it's the sidestep 4. This is 24 frames to impact, but it's helped by the fact that it has fantastic evasive properties, because not only does she dip down, she's also doing it out of a sidestep. So massive evasive properties, very decent range. You can see from like way out here, that's about tip range for it. Very good move. And it has +2 on hit now, and that's really great. A good low poke like this with plus frames on hit to open up some offense is very decent. So I think that's cool. It's also only -12, similar to your down back 3. So you're looking at a very cool low here. I think this could be great. It also has a high extension in the shape of sidestep 4 1+2, and I think this is fringe. I wouldn't really use this extension. It becomes natural on counter hit, but it doesn't really have a spark on counter hit, so it's not really easy to counter hit confirm. Even if it was, I don't think you'd be able to do it in time. So while it does have decent damage when that does happen, I don't think that the 1+2 extension right there is anything to necessarily write home about. But the sidestep 4 by itself, really, really cool. So yeah, I'm going to recommend sidestep 4 and down back 3 for your main low game. Maybe this, but it's has a lot of risk associated with it. And then sometimes you're going to need a bigger, chunkier knockdown low, and for that you also basically have one option in the shape of down back 4. This is good because it hits grounded opponents and knocks down. It does a good chunk of 23 damage, and it's got some mild tracking properties, decent range, just decent hitbox overall. But it's 24 frames to impact, which is in the seeable range a lot of the time, so it's risky. And it can be launch punished at -17. So there you go. It's one of those knockdown but launch punishable lows. It's what you have for a chunky option. You can't really go to anything else unless you want to do snake edges. And you know, I'm the kind of player who recommends that you try and stay away from snake edges. They have their applications. For example, with Alisa, if you get a hit with only the third hit of this string, which is apparently difficult to do, you can chase them with a snake edge on the ground. Like that and stuff, and hit them in the head and whatever. But yeah, a snake edge is a snake edge. It's going to crush highs. This has homing properties. It goes into a full launch off of down for 1+2, but that's all I'm going to say about it. Down back 4 is my recommendation if you want a big knockdown low, and it does its job while crushing highs, so I think it's pretty good. And that's really it for all of the lows that aren't going to be covered in different sections. So yeah, as you can see, they're not. It's not an extensive list, but down back 3 all day, every day is probably the moral of the story here, and it's a very good move. So use it a lot. Next, we're gonna talk about, I think, some spacing tools and some other important moves from when you're not necessarily very close to your opponent, which is very important with this character because she excels at movement and creating space. So I'll see you guys in the next section. In this section, I want to talk about how to play with Alisa when you are in a spaced out position from your opponent and you're either playing the keep out game or trying to get in on them and attack. And as we've repeated many times up until this point, because you are a character who excels at backwards movement and defensive play, this is somewhere you're going to find yourself a lot of the time. So it's important to know what to do. And you have a lot of moves and stances that are specifically designed to complement you when you are playing at this range. Now, it needs to be said that the first and most important option that you have here is actually to probably do nothing. Alisa is very good at keep out. She has long range poking attacks. Her whiff punishment isn't excellent, but it's reasonable. And so one of the best options you have is to watch your opponent and to stay mobile and try and capitalize on their mistakes when they are attempting to apply offense. And I think the down for 2 really excels in this area because it's a relatively long range but also safe mid poke that you can stick out, especially after a sidestep. And if it just happens to connect, you can combo, and if it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal because it's safe on block. But apart from just staying out here and being a total turtle, there are many things that you can do. And I think before I talk about specific moves, I want to talk to you about boot stance, which is a very important stance, obviously specifically designed for this kind of situation. Boot stance is just flying forward like normal, like this. It's performed by pressing forward 3+4. And she doesn't have the chainsaws out in normal boot stance. If you have them out, the chainsaws out, it becomes called dual boot, so it's slightly different. The reason you would want to apply this stance is it's very good for closing the gap and applying a quick mix-up, but because it's a little bit on the slow side if you compare it to something like Moonglide from Alisa or the stance that Kunimitsu had in previous games, for example. It's especially good for Oki situations because when your opponent is forced to get off the ground, they're much more limited in their range of options, and it becomes very powerful for that as well. The first option you should be aware of that you have is you can press back and Alisa is going to cancel straight into her backup stance. Backup is another stance that we haven't talked about yet. It's going to get its own section later. Anytime you cancel this into backup stance, you can wait for a little bit and Alisa is going to end up in the while standing state. So you can see if I press 4 right away here, she does backup stance 4, and if I wait for just a little bit, she does while standing 4. So you have the option of accessing while standing moves if you delay for a little bit. A slightly more I think a powerful option when you're going to cancel your boot stance is to not press back, but to just press down. And Alisa is going to perform the exact same cancel, but because she doesn't need to fly back, it's quite a lot faster, and she can do it very close to her opponent. It's a good way of accessing your full crouch mix-up, of keeping your opponent on their toes, of crushing highs when they're trying to jab you out of the air. One of the main ways of dealing with Alisa when she's flying at you is to jab her out of the air, float her, and apply a combo. But if she can do this, she can go under stuff with high crushing lows, so it's really good. So a lot of the time when you're applying this stance, not attacking is a very good option, and especially the down cancel is just on a dime really quick. Okay. Let's talk about some boot stance moves. Let's start with the low. For the low, you only have the 3. The 3 is not super powerful in terms of its damage. It's only 17, which means that it can be a little bit difficult to incentivize your opponent to duck using this for the mix-up. With Moonglide, with Alisa, for example, this her version of this move, which is Moonglide 4, is a knockdown move, which makes it a lot more respectable. But people seem to be annoyed enough about this, though, that they actually will duck you a lot of the time. So it does work. Because you can chase people on the ground with this, it becomes dangerous. And if you're flying at your opponents at the end of the round, when this 3 is going to kill them, the mix-up becomes golden, because they will be panicking and they just have to choose. And they will duck more often than not, because lows at the end of the round are kind of common. But the low itself is... it has one of those extended hitboxes where it can have variable frame data, which is a little bit annoying. It can be anywhere between -14 to -10, depending on where you hit with it. So it can be launch punishable in some cases. It's important to keep in mind. Another really good thing about the low is that it's going to give you a counter hit launch. So that's one thing that sort of adds a little bit to the stopping power of this move. Which is needed, I think, but it's really decent. I really like it. The range is fantastic. You can slide from way downtown, it's still gonna hit. That was a little bit out of range, but something like that, and it's still gonna connect. You can do it very late. You can do it on grounded opponents. If they are rolling to the side and stuff on the ground, you can just wait a little bit before applying it and then catch them. I think it's very useful. So that's your low. And then to give you some mids, my favorite option is the boot stance 1-2. Boot stance 1-2 is this fast little punch series. It's a natural combo, and it's completely safe on block, which is fantastic. So very fast, good range. You can hit them from really far out with this. You just need to time it properly. And you can get some serious range on it. Interesting thing to note about this 2-hit string is that the second punch right there, where she punches down, is actually a spike move that can break floors on the floor break stage. That can be useful in some cases and annoying in some cases if you're not trying to break the floor. I think this is really good. -9. It connects to this longer string, which is 1-2-1 3+4, and that's a fringe move that is only ever used in very specific situations. You could use it for tag combos in tag 2, but that doesn't exist anymore. So I think that move is fringe at best. Doesn't really see any competitive use, but you might be able to use it in some nifty wall combo conversions and stuff, I guess. You know, maybe after something like this. If you need something after while standing 2, I guess this could maybe work as an improvised combo if you're having to deal with the wall. But yeah, like I say, I don't think it's very important. So let's move on to some other boot stance move. You have the boot 2, which is another really great mid, and I guess this is maybe your main mid for the boot stance mix-up. You can see that it does 25 damage, which is similar to the 1-2, so you're dealing with the same damage, but with this you get that really chunky knockdown, which doesn't give you guaranteed follow-ups, but it's still very good. You're in a pretty nifty position for some Oki right there. So those are really your main mix-ups out of this stance. The 3, then you can mix that with... I love the 1-2, that's my favorite option, but you know, the 2 is definitely there. You can capitalize on the fact that it knocks down, right? The 2 is also safe on block. It is another variable frame data move, so you can see how early this can hit. It's or how tip this can hit. If we do like something like that, maybe you see how weird that range is because she has such a long active hitbox. But I can do it very, very late as well and be way close to my opponent very early in the animation of boot. And so the variable frame data has an extremely wide range, everything from -8 to +3. The fact that you can get plus frames when you really tip this, I think is interesting. I've never thought of it as a sort of plus on block move before. It's probably risky when applied at this range anyway, but it is completely safe on block, meaning that I think apart from the fact that the damage and properties on the low here are a little bit lackluster, this mix-up is actually kind of solid. The final option that you have is the 4, and this is probably your most powerful single hit launcher with Alisa. You can do some really fun combos if you're one of those combo artists, for example, fully charged while standing 1+2 and crazy stuff like that. It's extremely powerful, and so if you have a very hard read that your opponent is going to attempt a duck, then you can go balls to the wall with this, and it's going to give you a massive combo. It is -27 on block, however, so it's somebody's going to get launched when this move comes out, and I suggest that you try and make sure that it isn't you. And I think if you really think that they're going to duck, 25 solid damage and a knockdown for the 2 or something like that is still very good. So unless you're really in a position where you need to make a swing, or you feel very confident that they're going to duck, maybe don't rely too much on this option, but it's there. So that's boot stance. The stance should have had its own section, but I think it fits so well into the sort of spaced out game section that I thought I'd covered it here. And now I want to start talking about more traditional sort of moves. And we're going to start by talking about your while running mix-up, which is very good with Alisa. You have the first sort of iconic move that we want to talk about here is the while running. I got to make sure that my mic is turned on. I panicked last night when I was recording another section of this. I recorded for 20 minutes and I found out that my mic had been disconnected the whole time, so I had to redo it because there was no sound. Anyway, while running 2. You probably know about this move. It's your Superman punch. It's iconic. There are some other characters who have analogies to this move now with characters like Claudio. But Alisa's version is not as fast, doesn't cover as much ground as Claudio, and does slightly less damage, but it gives you the guaranteed follow-up. The guaranteed follow-up is forward 1+2 for a total of 50 damage, meaning that it in the end usually ends up being more damage than Claudio's, which I think is fair because it has it's not quite as good property-wise as Claudio's otherwise, so it deserves to get that increased chunk of damage. This is a high. It comes out of while running 2 or forward 2, so you can do it from a close range with instant while running. If you're very good at instant while running, I recommend it's something you practice, because the faster you can get this move out and the closer you can be when you get it out, the better it's going to be. So this is something to practice. You get +5 to +7 on block, so again it's a variable frame data move because of the extended hitbox. I just book it as +5 in my head, and then I'm never negatively surprised by something, which I recommend if you don't have an extreme sense of feeling for, individual frames. I can usually tell when I look at a move whether or not it's like 14 or 15. I can sort of, feel a 1 frame difference at this point. But when it comes to whether or not I'm +5 or +6 on block, that's a little bit more difficult. But what a fantastic move. Good for combos, good for a lot of different things, but the danger obviously being that you can get very ducked because of the highness of the move. And so this is why you don't want to be like out here and think, oh, I really want to do my while running 2 right now, and you start running and then you apply this move, unless you're very deliberately mixing it up. You really want to be as close as possible, and you want to do it as fast as possible, because then they can't react to it and then you won't get ducked as often. But when you get those plus frames, maybe go straight into a nice little throw, or apply some sort of mix-up. If you get the hit, then apply your forward 1+2 for the guaranteed 50 damage. Beautiful, right? And then you're going to need a mid mix-up for this duckable high, and what you have is the while running 3-4, or just the while running 3 by itself. Wild running 3 by itself is for big boys who are playing at a slightly more advanced level of competition, I think. But the 3-4 and just finishing the string is very good as well. It's a solid 35 damage knockdown. Wall splat, works for combos, works for a lot of things, so it's very, very good. But it puts you, let's see here at the frame data, -7. Yeah, you're at -7 on block, so it's completely safe, which is fantastic. This is a completely safe mix-up, apart from the duckability of the Wild Running 2. But what a lot of more senior Alisa players will be seen doing is they will run in, they will apply just the 3 by itself, and then they'll start, for example, sidewalking or sidestepping on block. And the reason for this is that you're only -4 for the 3 by itself. And so that's very cool. So, you know, if you're reading a duck, maybe finish the string. If you're just trying to get in with some sort of safe mid and get something started, then maybe do the 3 by itself and then consider some sort of movement option. So it's a pretty cool little move here, but you need to keep in mind that while it looks like this might be a homing move because she really spins just like a circle around herself, this move is actually very sidewalkable. So that's something that will surprise a lot of new Alisa players. They will be like thinking that this is what I use for getting people who are stepping and sidewalking at a range, and then somebody just knows that they can just walk this if they have really good timing and they know how to do it, and then you're going to get destroyed for using it. So don't be fooled. It's not linear, but it certainly isn't a perfect homing move either. So sideways movement is a way to deal with both options some of the time, and you need to keep that in mind. But that's your wild running mix-up, and it's powerful, it's a staple, but I think really the most important part of it is learn how to apply that wild running 2 as fast as you can from as close a range as possible by doing forward, forward, forward 2. And if you can learn how to do like true instant wild running from range 0, then you know that's fantastic. Next, maybe we should talk about 4 forward 1 plus 2. 4 forward 1 plus 2 is a sort of long-range, high-crushing launcher. It's not super good, but I think it deserves to be mentioned here. I've heard it talked about as a whiff punisher before. I don't think it is a whiff punisher unless your opponent is whiffing so big that you should probably be winning the game by default. Because it's a little bit slow, it comes out of forward. But when you do get a hit with this, it is a powerful launcher, and it does go under high. So I think you can sort of whiff punish with it, but it's more of an interruption-y kind of tool. When you think you know what they're going to do, maybe try and go under that and launch them with this. You stab them with your hand. You're at -16 on block, so you can be launched, but when you do get the combo here, it's really good. And what's nice about it is before you needed to do like down jabs to be able to get your combo here, kind of like that, but they've made this quality of life improvement where you can just spin right away with down for 1 plus 2, so the combo is more solid as well. This has an extension which is 4 forward 1 plus 2 2, where she stabs you and then flicks her chainsaw out inside her opponent and hits them multiple times. That is very good for wall combos. It's basically your optimal wall damage ender in my opinion, because it does as much damage as this option while giving you destructive mix-ups for the wake up. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But it's very, very solid stuff. But it's not really used in normal spaced out play. For that, you're just using this version of the move, and you're not trying to get the chainsaw out. Okay, back forward 2 is a power crush move that is sort of reminiscent of your wild running Superman punch. This does not give you guaranteed follow-ups, but it is a very good armor move. The input, because it's back forward, is a little bit on the slow side. So it's not as, I mean, if this was just her forward 2, I think it would be abused. It would feel so good to just get a really long range power crush out on a dime like that. But because of the input, it's a little bit hampered in its usability, but it's still very good. And when somebody's coming at you with attacks, especially if you already have the life lead, you can afford to sacrifice some of your health, the damage that you're going to take while armoring through. Then you can capitalize on that powerful knockdown. This forward 1 plus 2 here is not guaranteed in this scenario, just so you know. They have the option of getting up safely. Okay, Next, we need to talk about down 3, and down 3 is a very sort of important move. It kind of is almost like a stance, not really, it's not a stance, but it kind of deserves its own section in a way. And I'm gonna flip over to my frame data, or my section that I wrote specifically on this move right now, because I think not only does this move need to be talked about because of its importance for Alisa players, I think a lot of people who come to this video to learn more about how to defeat Alisa are specifically frustrated about this move. Okay. Down 3 is new in this game. It's a combo ender. It's a very long range, sort of low pokey kind of move. It looks like this. You fly with your jetpacks and you spike them. You don't spike them, but you sort of, well, you hit their legs with your foot, kind of like a spike, but it's not a spiking move. Sorry, I forgot that that's a very sort of specific term in fighting games. And then this is another thing that's going to transition straight into your boot stance, and just like when we were talking about, backup stance, and just like when we were talking about how you cancel boot into backup, you can wait a little bit and you get access to while standing. So you go from the down 3 into backup stance, into while standing, and then she stands up and recovers standing if you just let it, sort of happen. So it sort of goes through a couple of stages, and you need to get some feeling for when to time the different things you might want to go for the follow-up. Now, the first thing that's really interesting about this move is that if you, it's obviously going to have one of those extended hitboxes with variable frame data, meaning that its frame data is very sort of annoying to have to talk about and understand. But the first thing to note is that if you hit it at max range, at sort of tip range, kind of like right there, the backup stance 1, which is a very powerful high, 31 damage, becomes a natural combo, which is huge. So let's try and, so Lars is set to second option, all guard. You can see it right there. He's going to block the 4 extension here. So let's see if we can get this to come out natural. Okay, so there you go. So that's about the range you want to hit with it. And if you're fishing for these hits, it can be very powerful. It's 48 damage. But the further away you are, the more time your opponent will have to actually react to this low. And it is a reactable low. They're probably thinking about it and sort of looking for it anyway. So there is a lot of risk associated with applying this move. When you're closer like this, as you can see, Lars has the option of blocking the boot stance 1, which means that it's not a natural combo. So you need to get a sense of the range, and you need to get a sense of the frame data, and I think that's very important. Then you also need to develop a sense for when at the earliest you're able to transition into while standing after, because that's something you're gonna want to do a lot of the time. So I think impact frame wise you're working with, let's double check it here. Down 3. Yeah, so something in the 23 to 32 range, so it's very variable, like a 9 frame gap in between right there. So that's quite big, and it can be anything between -10 and -19 on block. So you can definitely get launch punished for using this. It's just going to depend on what range it hits at, and it's all about developing a sense for the move. It's very good. Don't abuse it, however. Be aware that when you are in here and you want to go for follow-ups when the boot stance 1 is not guaranteed, boot stance 1 is a high, so you might want to mix that with mids. A very safe option to get out of the boot or out of the recovery here, not boot stance, is the while standing 4. Very solid, safe little option. But the next thing to note about the move is that it's actually a counter hit launcher, and the boot stance 1 becomes a powerful spin option when you get the counter hit, and then you can get just something simple like that, and you're already at 60 damage. So it's obviously a very powerful launcher. Let's see if maybe we can do, is there something more powerful here? Something like that maybe? Yeah. You can get really good combos, so it's cool. What a fantastic move for Alisa. It's obviously used as a powerful combo ender. I'm getting some messages on my PC here, sorry about that if you could hear that. But yeah, it's a very important tool, and you need to be aware that even though you're keeping this move in mind and you're trying to tip range it for the guaranteed follow-up and you're trying to apply it on your opponent, they're definitely waiting for it and looking for it as well. I'll just mention here that one thing you can do, if they're so scared of it that they're sort of ducking at a range, they're waiting for this little sound effect and stuff, you can do 1+2, which will sometimes confuse them and catch them ducking and launch them from a range. So it's not a mix-up. But the more scared they are of down 3, the fact that you can apply a mid launcher from about the same range you would apply the down 3 is kind of cool, because it will lead to a free launch every once in a while. Not a high level strat, but it can definitely work, so maybe keep it in mind. Okay. Is that everything we want to talk about in this section? I mean, your normal poking attacks, especially your back 1 for keep out, very good. Back 3, standing 4, all this stuff, moving sideways, maybe sidestep 4 in the new season, very good. But apart from that, if you really want to get in, you can do while running stuff, which is great. You can keep on back dashing and try and stay patient if you want to. You can get in with a down 3, which is cool. So she has a lot of solid options here. I think I'm going to leave it there for this section. There are a couple of more moves we might talk about, but maybe they'll crop up later. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you're still with us, I'll see you guys in the next section. Next, I would like to talk to you about Alisa's very important full crouch mix-up. It should be noted that while it might look unimpressive at first glance in terms of the damage it dishes out, the full crouch mix-up just ends up being such an important strategic tool for Alisa that she applies it constantly, and it's a really important part of her standard gameplay. So even though it might not look like it's something that's, you know, super powerful and it's gonna kill the opponent every time or whatever, the damage isn't huge, let's say. It is very important to understand and apply constantly, and if you look at good high-level Alisa play, you'll see it all the time. First, let's talk about the different good ways you can access your full crouch mix-up with Alisa. I think one of the best ways is back 1. Back 1, we've talked about what a fantastic poke this is, and it recovers in full crouch, meaning on hit you can transition with a healthy amount of plus frames, so it's very, very good. You can cancel your boot stance and go into full crouch and apply stuff from there, which is really cool as well. I really like that option. And you can go in from down 3 on hit, and you can hold down to stay in full crouch and do stuff right away here as well. So you go down 3, hold down, and then you need to, again, get a feeling for when you're able to do the next move, so that you don't end up doing something, you know, like that by mistake, like a backup stance move. But then you can apply this from that as well. But it's also very important to just duck normally with Alisa to access it when you are applying it as Oki. It needs to be explained that Alisa's full crouch mix-up is very good for Oki, makes up the core of her Oki game, and so when you're knocking the opponent down, running up and applying Sad Hound and stuff like that can be very, very good. It was good in Season 1. Now it's kind of like a bootleg launcher because of some weird new properties, so this is not only your full crouch mix-up, it's one of the core aspects of your Oki game as well. Okay, so let's start by explaining what your main low is for this mix-up. The main low is going to be full crouch down forward 1 plus 2, the Sad Hound. I guess this is called that because it looks like she's petting a dog. Who knows? You can call it the tie your shoelaces or whatever you prefer. It's very good. You can chase people on the ground with this. It's fast enough that it can't really be reacted to. It's 21 to impact, so difficult for most people. Offline, nearly impossible. You've got range, you've got tracking. It's a very solid low overall, so this is the main option for your low here. 26 natural, really, really good. It's only minus 11 on block, which I think is fantastic for a low that is this useful. You know, in Tekken it wouldn't be odd for a move like this to maybe be minus 13, and then you'd end up launch punchable against Kazuya and so on. So it's just really, really cool. What a great low. You get plus 5 on hit, which is really massive as well for low. You're crushing highs throughout the animation, which is very important, so you'll go in with stuff sometimes like I've told you earlier that you shouldn't really try to transition all that much from this down back 3 because you're not transitioning with plus frames. This is a minus on hit move, but if you do this and you think your opponent's just going to go for jabs, which they will do a lot of the time, you can just stay down here and crouch, go under all of that stuff, all of the highs, maybe you know, standing 4 or something, and do this, and for the entire time you're down here you're immune to highs, so can definitely work just for its good high crush properties. But the plus 5 are the plus 5 is really nice, and you can keep on going after getting a connect with this. Now, in Season 2, and this is where it gets a little bit weird. Let's see if we can get our opponent on the ground here. They've given you the option of launching your opponent off the ground when you hit somebody who is sleeping with this, which means that the Oki game becomes even more powerful. You need to be very close to them. You can't be sort of spaced out here because you're not going to be able to get the follow-up. So maybe from about that range. And you can now get down forward 1. It needs to come out very fast, but you can get down forward 1 after this, and that's going to allow you to turn it into a full combo. Because your opponent is obviously in a grounded state when they get hit, the combo is going to start with ground scaling, meaning that it is not quite as powerful as a full combo, but you can get some serious damage. And if you turn this into a wall carry, then I mean, it's just fantastic. So this does a quick demonstration. Let's do something like this. And you can see you can get the wall there, and then you'll end up with basically full combo damage and everything. So as an Oki option, into the down for 1 is really good. You can see if I reset the positioning to range 1 and I do it from right here, the down forward 1, even if I get the second hit of the Sad Hound, will actually whiff. So you need to be really quite close. Make sure you're close to the opponent, and then you can start applying this powerful option. I mean, people are talking about how this is some sort of like really super powerful new tool that really changes the way Alisa plays and stuff. And I don't think that's true. I think it's a cute little thing you can do every once in a while. It sort of improves your Oki game a little bit and makes it maybe a little bit more scary. So it's definitely not bad, but don't get crazy thinking this is like you know, some sort of broken new strategy to abuse all the time. I just think it's a cool little thing you can do. But yeah, so we've talked about your low for your full crouch mix-up, and now you need to get some mids. And as always with a full crouch mix-up, you can go balls to the wall and start launching from full crouch with stuff like Wild Standing 2, maybe hop kick. Like that if you want to, but the main low that really gets used here for the most part is the while standing 1+2. Very good move, very important. What a fantastic mid. So while standing 1+2 can be charged up, and Alisa is going to spin, rotate her torso, and the move becomes increasingly powerful. It's got 3 stages. The instant version, where you just tap, does 20 damage and a knockdown. You'll notice, by the way, that it has the homing streak, meaning that this is a homing move. Very, very good. It means that because of the good tracking properties of this move and the homing properties of this move, your full crouch mix-up is completely oppressive against people who are trying to move sideways, which is just it's even better at locking people down, which is so fantastic. You really need to be careful when you want to play the instant version here, which I think is the best version, because if you press the button for just a microsecond too long, you will get the second stage version. And the way to tell which version you are applying is by looking at the damage. So the instant version should have 20, like that. The second stage should have 24, like that. And the full charge version is going to have 28. And also have a camera effect when it hits, like that. So really cool. The instant version is -8, so completely safe. And if you spin and extend it for 1 spin, it's 28 frames to impact, so slow, reactable, but only -4. And the full charge version, where you spin 3 times, I'm going to go ahead and say that unless you have some very hard reads and your opponent doesn't react at all, don't really use it. It's too slow. It's a little bit too easy to understand that she's going to apply the mid. So either do the instant version for 20, or the 1 spin version for 24. You get more damage, but you're slower. You get better frame data if you charge it. -8, like I said, for the instant version, and -4 for the 1 spin version. But those are your main mids that you're mixing up with this Sad Hound, and it's really, like I said, important for Alisa to do this full crouch mix up a lot. It's very, very good. And you can mix in your other favorite safe mids. Maybe you go for a little while standing 4 right there. Maybe the 1-2. Probably don't do the 1-2 because of the duck ability. But if you think your opponent's going to duck, feel free to go for a launcher and party a little bit harder, and it's going to be good times for you. Good for Oki, good for full crouch. You have some pretty smooth transitions, I think, particularly with the back one. So back one into full crouch and then full crouch mix up is a very important strategy with this character. Back one should be applied a lot with this character in a lot of different cases. Up close, spaced out. Yeah, use it a lot, and also consider, you know, the boot stance transition here very decent as well, very fast for what it actually is. I think that's gonna wrap it up for the full crouch. Next, we're going to talk about something very interesting, which is the chainsaws. It's going to get very juicy once we switch over, so I'll see you guys in a little bit. Welcome back, everyone. It's going to get really fun now because some of the more out there and crazy parts of Alisa's character design come into play once we start talking about destructive stance, or DES stance, or chainsaws, or whatever you want to call it. This is a mix-up stance of sorts, but it's also not really. What you can do with this stance is, the way you apply it strategically, is you can use it kind of similarly to how you would use a traditional mix-up stance like Savage for Miguel. You transition with plus frames off of a poke, get the stance out, and then go straight into, you know, a mid-low mix-up or something like that. But you can also stay in this stance and move around. It changes your entire move list, changes the way you move, and sort of turns you into a different character. It's very strange, and so destructive stance has always been ambiguously useful for this character, and Alisa players can sort of get into a mood of using destructive stance. Some days when I played her a lot back in the day, I would not go into destructive stance almost at all for a whole day, and some other times I just really like to party with it. But I think it's seen some significant enough buffs lately that you should be trying to go for destructive stance quite a lot, not all the time, but quite often. It's a lot stronger. It's never been bad, but I think for the first time in Season 2, it's really quite good, which is cool. You have the option of transitioning manually into destructive by pressing down 1+2, which you are almost never going to do. Maybe if you're trying to taunt or flex or something like that, you can do this. And then the other main way you transition into it is by pressing 1+2 after a lot of your powerful moves. It really can come out off of a lot of different options, and so you should really go through your move list and look for these transitions to be aware of all the options that you have. I'm going to mention the most important ones here, obviously, but kind of fringe stuff like forward 3-4 I think has a transition. Oh, sorry, forward. Let's do this. Yeah, which is weird. You can finish the string and still get him, I think. Yeah, so there are a lot of different ones. You can do it after Sad Hound, which is cool. But yeah, it's a cool little stance. You cancel the stance, and this is very important, by pressing down and back. I used to think that you had to cancel this with down 1+2, which is the same as the activation, but down back is just a really easy way to do this. But as you will notice quite quickly when I say that, if you are, you know, if you are an experienced Tekken player, is that if you don't have access to down back, that means that you can't crouch, and that's completely true. You can cancel the stance with down back, but you can't crouch using down back when you're in destructive stance. Destructive stance changes not only your entire move list, you have access to no moves that really exist out of destructive stance apart from the new Power Crush. So you can't duck. Your your backdash disappears and becomes this electric version of your cartwheel, which is a up quarter circle back motion, like most cartwheels. When you don't have the chainsaws out, so you do have access to that from normal stance. So that's your backdash. You can't normally backdash. You can't Korean backdash cancel, obviously. Your forward dash becomes a version of your boot stance with the chainsaws out, known as dual boot, which has completely separate move list from normal boot stance. It doesn't work the same way as normal boot stance, it just looks the same. So that's interesting to note. Your sidestep becomes this kind of slow, heavy version that really jiggles your boobies around. This looks awful. I used to think that this was like, what it meant was that your sidestep is so bad that you shouldn't really use it, but honestly, this sidestep has some pretty decent evasive properties and can definitely be used for evasive sidestepping the way you would with a normal sidestep. And then you can even whiff punish with a launcher if you want to, but you have this sort of awkward, slower version of your normal sidestep. So yeah, your movement options completely change. You cannot crouch, which is very important to note, I think. You also get access to a very buff and very cool version of a normal sidestep that is affectionately referred to as the electric sidestep by a lot of Alisa players. This is sidestep or up or down 3+4. Depending on what direction you want to go in, and you can see that it has some very serious evasive properties and is really quite good. It's kind of fringe in its usefulness, but I love this because like you're flying backwards like this, you're flying sideways like this, and when you're in dual boot, the stance when you're flying in with chainsaws, if you tap up or down, you have access to the electric sidestep like this, so you can really fly around like just a large, very terrifying insect and really stress your opponent out. And so this is not super powerful, but it's not bad. You can definitely do this, and when you get in a good mood and you're having fun with this, you can really start dealing some serious damage as well. But those are just some movement options that you have off of Destructive Stance. These are the ways in which your basic character movement is going to change. Next, I think we need to talk about your transitions. I think the main transition into Destructive that is really good is 1-1-1+2. 1-1 is your optimal 10-frame block punisher, meaning that you're going to be using this move a lot. It gives you good plus frames on hit. Let's go back to the punishment section of my notes to double check exactly how much. I think it's +5, right? Yeah, so you get +5 and you transition into Destructive with the 1+2, so you're getting into a pretty good mix-up stance with plus frames. It's really nice, and it's a move that is constantly applied. So it's constantly applied when it's a guaranteed hit as well, because it's a block punisher, meaning that you can confidently go into this knowing that you're going to be able to mix up. So I think it's a very good transition. Another good transition that you have is the 17-frame 4-2. It's another great poke. It has the option of 1+2 for Destructive, like you saw right there. The forward 2 is a +7 move, so really juicy frames right there for getting into the chainsaws. Super good. Other good transitions are the back 3-4. We mentioned that this is a very solid new long-range whiff and block punisher for you with 37 damage, buffed in Season 2. Very powerful, very cool. This gives you a very respectable +6 into Destructive, which is really good as well, but it will make your neck break for some reason if you look at our neck animation right there. But it's super good, so that's cool as well. You also have the Sad Hound, so when you're applying your full crouch mix-up, which we talked about earlier, this low is so fantastic because even though it is a low, it gives you +5, and you can go into Destructive off of that with the +5. So again, you have solid frames going into the stance, making it very powerful. The forward 2-1 is a punisher that naturally brings the chainsaws out, so you don't have to transition. Alisa also has a lot of moves where the chainsaws will come out as part of the string that you're doing. So for example, 3-2, 4-2-1, and a couple of moves like this, they will necessarily come out, and you don't have the option of not bringing them out. So if you want to use these moves, then you need to be very aware of what you want to do after the transition. You shouldn't be surprised by the fact that you're suddenly in a new stance with a completely different move list. While standing 1-2, one of your main while standing block punishers, very important. This is +6, which is really cool. So you have +6. You can tell like you get at least +5 for most of these options, between like +5 and +7. So it's really good, and it's kind of homogeneous, which makes it easy and sort of organic to transition into the mix-up after this. You have the 4-forward 1+2-2. Like that, which is mainly a wall combo option, but the reason it's very important is that if you use that for your wall ender, you're going to be in chainsaws when you're applying the wall Oki after the combo, and your chainsaw Oki is very good at the wall, so that's cool. It's important to note. Down forward 1-1-2. gives you chainsaws with plus frames on block and on hit. This is very, very good. So you get +6 on block, +8 on hit. I talked about this in the poking section, this string, so if you're interested in learning more about it, maybe go back to that time code. But this is another way of getting into Destructive with solid plus frames, provided that you're willing to take the risk of getting the second part of the string ducked. And then, of course, the new Power Crush down forward 1+2, which gives you armor, knocks the opponent down, and gives you the chainsaws out organically right there. Very good. The Whiff Punisher, this move, but you're typically going to lose the chainsaws when you apply the combo off of this anyway. So, but you can stay in if you want to and do stuff that works. Alright, these are your most important transitions in my opinion, but there are more, so like I say, you need to explore that a little bit and be aware of when you can do it in case you're going to be doing it a lot, because it's an important option. Okay, let's talk about your destructive stance moves. The first move, and one of the most important ones, is the forward 1. Really your fastest move out of destructive. This is 12 frames to impact. It is -0 on block, which is very good because you can do this, look for hits, look for damage, and not really be worried about ending up at enough minus frames that you have to stop using destructive right away. Now, one thing that I've forgotten to mention so far is that the way destructive stance works is you get to keep on attacking with destructive as long as the attacks are successful. If you get hit, then you're gonna lose the the stance. So anytime they hit you out of this, the stance is gonna instantly disappear and you can't do it anymore. So you need to connect with your opponent's hitbox with the chainsaws for the stance to remain, and that's something important that I neglected to mention. When we in the introduction of the stance. But forward 1. +/-0 on block and +11 on hit. So +11 hit on hit, you might think, does that mean I get guaranteed damage? No, because like I say, your fastest move is forward 1, and forward 1 is 12. So you don't get guaranteed stuff, but you get massive advantage, and you can go straight into something else. So if you do 2 of these in a row, they can interrupt it with jabs, but that's really it. They have to be careful about other stuff. So it's a very oppressive move. Very good on block, very good on hit, and super, super fast. So forward 1 is important. It is a high, so that's something to keep in mind. But they are going to be scared of ducking here, because I think the best move that you have in destructive stance, bar none, my favorite move by far, might be my favorite Alisa move, is the destructive stance 1. As opposed to forward 1, which we just talked about. This is the 1. This is just a single hit. Alisa will shove her chainsaws into her opponent on either side, and if it hits, she will then cross them and cut them in half for that final hit of massive damage, right? So that doesn't happen if you whiff with the move. The 1 is a 14 frame move, so it's really quite fast for a mid this powerful. It does 5 damage, it does 3 damage 5 times. For a total of 20, and then does that massive last hit for a total of 35. So it's a very chunky knockdown mid. Super, super powerful. Definitely powerful enough that you have solid mix-ups in this stance, and I think this is the mid that sort of makes that work. You have other good options though that we're going to mention as well. One thing that is really cool about this move is that it's completely safe on block. It's so good that you have a mid this powerful, 14 frames that's safe on block. This is something that typically would not exist out of a stance like this, so it has the prerequisite of you needing to be in the stance, and so you get to have this really fantastic frame data. A lot of people do not know about the safety on block of this move because of how powerful it looks, and so they will attempt to punish it. So if you get it blocked, maybe wait and see if they're going to try and go for a block punish. That's going to not work, and then usually, because a lot of good block punishers are punishable themselves, you can punish their failed punish. That's obviously something that's going to be prevalent mostly in lower ranks, but there you go. Okay, yeah, so the 1 is fantastic, and another thing that needs to be said about this is that if the opponent will end up in an awkward knockdown situation where if they get up, they're going to get up with their back towards you. If you look at Lars, he has his back towards Alisa when he recovers here. And this is something that very few people know how to recover from properly. And you can see even in high level competition, people getting guaranteed follow-ups here, because what you can do is you can press forward 3+4 to go into dual boot, and then do dual boot 1+2, which is this chainsaw corkscrew. And if you do that properly, you're gonna hit him straight in the back and really murder them. So it's very good. You can get something anywhere between 25 to 35 damage. You can get 25, 30, or 35 depending on what range you connect with. So let's try and get it here. You can see right there I got the 35 because I delayed it a little bit. If I do it a little bit faster, like out there, okay, I got the 35 again. That's the wrong move. That's the wrong move again. Sorry about this. There you go, and there you can see the weaker version where you just hit the legs for 25. But this is a very, very solid follow-up here. It's really impressive for the wake-up situation. And a lot of people, because you're so far away right here, they don't expect you to be able to apply actual Oki from that range. They're maybe not aware that they actually have their back to you when they're recovering. So a very good follow-up option right there. But just overall, what a fantastic mid-destructive stance 1 is. I really love this move. Safe. And it just by itself creates the entire mix-up more or less that you have from this stance. I'm gonna have a drink here. I think my voice is going a little bit dry. All right. What else? Well, the other mid that you have is the completely fantastic forward 1+2. Forward 1+2 is very slow to come out. As you can see, it's a 23 frame impact move, so it's 9 frames slower than the 1, which means that it is you really need your opponent to be hesitating for this to be applicable. I'm really sorry about my voice right now, but when you are able to get it out, it is so good. First of all, it's a normal hit launcher, which you might not know. The combo you need to do here is the same follow-up that you would do off of this. It's forward 3+4 and then dual boot 2-1, which is obviously a really cool combo. I love that you can get this here. This move used to be a bound move, meaning that it was it was basically a spin move in Tekken Tag 2, which meant that you could keep on going there and it could turn into, I think I could get somewhere between 90 to 100 damage off of this combo, which is really good. But now you get this. This is +7 on block, and let me say that one more time. It's a mid launcher that you can use for your mix-up here. That is +7 on block. I mean, that is insanely good. Your opponent, if they know about Alisa, is going to be aware of that. If they aren't, that basically means that what you do here is you do this, and then you're at +7, so you do it again, and you get the launcher, you just go straight into the 1, and they're gonna swing like so often, because they really don't expect that to have +7 on block. It's so massive. It has a follow-up if you connect with it, or you can throw them over you, and it gives you a total of 38 damage if you include the part where they hit the ground. But I think because you can get guaranteed follow-ups by just doing the first hit by itself like that, it's not really that useful to do the follow-up, unless of course you are applying a wall combo with destructive. This is a rare situation. You will be applying Oki with destructive a lot at the wall, but you will not necessarily be wall splatting and then wall comboing using destructive all that much. But when you do, you can do stuff like say for example you get something like this is gonna work. Okay, let's try this instead. You see, you can get that, and you get that really nice 60% scaling on the final hit there, which is what you want to get for the final hit of any wall combo. You want to get that right before they hit the ground scaling for a much more massive hit at the end of the combo. So it has some applications in fringe wall combos, and so don't forget that it exists, but maybe don't, throw it out all the time either. So I've given you your main poke and your fast sort of oppression tool and interruption tool, and I've given you two very solid mids, which means that now you're going to be wanting some lows so that this mix-up package becomes complete. And the main low that you're using is down 1. Down 1 is fantastic. It is fast enough at 20 that it's not going to get reacted to, and it gives you 24 damage, which is big enough that I think that this mix-up is solid. Kind of like how the boot stance mix-up suffers a little bit from being not too scary in the low department. I think this is good enough at 24. It's also very healthy +3 on hit, on hit, despite the fact that it's low. -2 on -2 on block. Is that really true? Need to double check that on rbnorway. That's not what I remember. Yeah, sorry, I was completely lying to you. I'm so glad I caught that. You're at minus 13, 14 to 13, depending on the extended hitbox on block, and then you get a +2 to +3 depending on the hitbox box on hits. There you go. It's one of those extended hitbox moves, and it makes sense that there will be a 1-frame interval both on hit and on block because the animation doesn't change, right? So I'm very sorry I messed that up, but I'm glad I caught myself. Minus 14 and then +2 on block. So it is a little bit of a risky low, but it definitely works to enable this mix-up and is very good. The only other real low you have here is the down 2. The down 2, if you do it like this, she's going to spin around and hit you, I think, 4 times. And then you can hold it to extend that to 6 hits. And she keeps on spinning. This is mainly useful if you are applying a destructive stance mix-up at the wall, because this has pushback and it's going to push your opponent out of its own hitbox, meaning that you're not going to get all the hits anyway. But if you are able to get all the hits because the wall is hindering the pushback, see, it's even hard to get at the wall. Let's knock him down one time here to make him face this way and see if it goes a little bit better. See, even there I don't get the full 6 hits. It really sort of pushes them to Alisa's left a lot, so maybe if we walk over to this side a little bit. There you go, full 6 hits. You can see that it is a natural combo for 30. But it's slow, it's difficult to use. I think it's not a very good low. So really, you could at least initially consider the down 1 your main and only really useful low from destructive stance. But it's good enough that the stance works, so I think that's nice. Okay, your 1+2 out of destructive is your homing move. So this is very good when you are in those wall situations because it's going to wall splat, it's homing, it is high however. But it's very good. It's 16 frames to impact. It's ±0 on block, which again I think is very interesting. You have some seriously favorable frame data in this stance, and it gives you that knockdown when it does connect. So very, very good. And then down forward 1+2 is the power crush move that you previously did not have access to, and it's the same as your out of stance down forward 1+2. Very, very good. -14 on block though, so be aware of that. But you do have the option of applying a power crush from the stance right now, which I think is very good, especially because you lack access to your generic jabs. Your fastest move is a 12-frame move in the shape of the forward 1, right? Which means that you might actually get some more serious value off of an armor move because it's a more reliable option for interrupting stuff and going through stuff now that you can't interrupt them using jabs, let's say. The last move I want to mention out of destructive stance is the electric sidestep 1, which is a move that I love. She used to not have a move from this sidestep here at all, but she does now. So electric sidestep, destructive stance, up or down 3+4, or dual boot up, tap up or down. You can get this 1 here, and it's a very solid and good mid now. It's also been buffed recently to make it seriously useful. So you have very good evasive properties, and you have a strong whiff punisher after the evasive movement, which is exactly what you want. This is -10. But it also has, if we can get Lars to block it, that's not the move. You can see that pushback. It's got so much pushback that there are very few 10-frame moves that are going to reach you. There are a couple of characters who specialize in very long-range 10-frame block punishment. I think 4-2 from Jack, for example, would probably reach here. So it's really a safe move for the vast majority of situations, and then your opponent needs to be playing a character who can punish it and then know that they can punish it and then actually do it successfully. So I mean 99% of cases that you can consider this a completely safe mid, and it gives you a really good, solid, chunky knockdown. What a good move. Great properties. So yeah, electric sidestep is buffed, a lot of your movement is buffed. A lot of your destructive stance is buffed. One of the main things they changed about this stance, in case you're interested, is that a lot of these hitboxes would push the opponent out of them, kind of like how this move does, meaning that it was hard to get good damage and keep the momentum going. But now they all have more sort of vacuum properties where they suck the opponent into the chainsaw, meaning that the stance is a lot more reliable. It's not going to do different things every time you apply it. Well, it still will some of the time. It's a volatile stance, but it's better than it used to be. If you do want to launch, by the way, you have the 2 here, but I don't think this is a super useful tool. If I was going to apply a mid, I would typically go for some sort of powerful knockdown mid like that instead. But you do have access to a down 4-2 here for a launch, and then the combo is a little bit of a weird thing you need to do. You can do that, but I'm not going to do that in this section. I think I've covered most of the really important parts of destructive stance already. So maybe we should make another cut in the video and talk about your next important stance, which is the backup stance. Which is cool because she's a computer, so she probably has a backup inside her brain or something, but she also actually physically backs up. So this stance is a pun. How fun. See you guys in a couple of seconds. Next, I want to talk to you about Alisa's backup stance, which looks like this. Pretty useful little stance, not massively applicable, but important for combos. Has a lot of important transitions into it, so we should definitely talk about it. You might expect a stance called backup to be used for backing up. It kind of looks like her bootleggish version of a Hayashida step, kind of, but it's definitely not that, because you can't really snake this backwards and sort of wriggle away from them. You go into this and then you commit to either doing a move right away, or you can wait for a little bit and you can get access to your while standing move list after just a slight delay. The input for the stance is down back 1, but you also transition into the stance after down 3, like that, and after cancelling boot stance with down or back. So it's unfortunate that both of her stances, the boot stance and the backup stance, start with a B. It's easy to mix them up, and I'm sorry if I've already done that a couple of times in this video. But this, when she's going back like this into a crouching position and bracing, is back up, and it's easy to remember because she actually backs up. And then boot is flying forward. So she's got like computer terms for her. I mean, just call this fly and make it a lot easier for yourself, I guess. But this can be used for its evasive properties. They're not as massive as you might think, but if you're up here and jabbing and then you think your opponent's going to retaliate, you can go back and hit them with a backup 1, and it's great damage. So it has some applications for its evasive properties, but it's also good in combos. So let's go through the moves. First of all, like I said, manual transition is down back 1, and then if you wait for just a little bit and don't do a move instantly, she will go into full crouch, or she'll go into while standing, going back to standing. You can hold the down or down back to stay in full crouch if you want to, and then if you wait for long enough, she just stands straight back up. So it has like 3 different stages to it. It's like a 3-layer cake, and you have to get used to the different timings here to know when to apply what, especially when you're going into it off of stuff like down 3. But the moves you have are, first of all, backup 1. This is a 32 damage, massive hit that wall splats and everything. It's really, really big, and it's plus on block, so it's very good. It's high. It gives you between +4 and +6 on block, because it has one of those extended hitboxes, so it depends on what range the move connects at. But it's your fastest and most standard option off of this stance, probably. Yeah, something you're going to use for For example, when you get a natural one of them after a tip range down 3, and then at the wall you can have a massive party at the wall. So that's cool. The next move is your backup 2, which is the high crushing unblockable launcher, which is a fringe move. I mean, unblockables aren't used all that much in this game, but this one maybe on occasion can see some use. And as you can see right here, it is a powerful launcher. You can spin with either forward 3-4-4 or with the while running 3-4. This move are going to work for the follow-up. That's fringe. It can be used. It has better range than you might suppose. It will hit from about that range, and if your opponent is caught flinching, then maybe it will work, but it is very duckable. It is very telegraphed, so don't use it too much. Next, you have backup 3. This move is very good. It is a safe mid launcher. It was improved in the new season to be more powerful. It's you can see that it sends them rolling really far, but you can get a follow-up for a combo here, and it's a 30 damage hit, so it's very big. The way you want to combo off of this, my tip I want to give you, is that you need to start running, and then you need to place a down 4-1 +2 for the spin. And there's a very easy way to know exactly how you want to do that, because when Alisa starts running, she will eventually get her wings out. Her wings will come out, do a sound effect, and then she'll have the jets out of her back like that. And when you hear and see that, that's the perfect time to do your spin move. See that? So it's actually very easy to use when you think about that, because this has been an awkward launcher to apply in the past, but now you have that nice little cue for you there. Yeah, so this is very good. It's safe, it's mid, and it's a launcher. So those are already properties that are good enough that you should be respecting the move. Unfortunately, backup doesn't really have like massive lows out of it to mix these mids in with, meaning that it's difficult to force your opponent to duck this and get the mids to hit. But because you have the option of transitioning into full crouch, you can do that and go into stuff like the Sad Hound from full crouch and sort of create a little bootleg mix up here. So it can definitely work, but after stuff like, you know, canceling this into canceling boot into this and stuff, doing this works. Back 3, down 3. A lot of the time after down 3, they want to duck, looking for example, this high. And because this high has those plus frames on block, it is dangerous enough on block that they might want to duck it. For that reason, meaning that your mids actually do have some companionship here and a couple of other moves to make them a lot more powerful. So yeah, it's decent. The last move that you have out of backup is the 4, which is the big knee launcher, and this used to be like your big massive mid here that you would use for the launch, but now that you have the 3 here, I think the 4 unfortunately has been kind of outclassed. It doesn't have a great range. I think 3 will hit from like way out here, whereas the 4 definitely won't. And so yeah, for the most part I think that the 4 has been outclassed at this point and isn't really all that useful. But it is I think the exact same -9. Yeah, -9 same as the 3, so yeah. Similar properties, but worse range, so stick with the 3, unless you're very close to the wall and you think the 3 is awkward because of the massive roll back at the wall. But those are your moves out of backup. It's a small, ambiguously useful stance that you can use for its evasive properties, kind of like a backswing blow, but it is also going to find a lot of application in transitions like down 3 and in combos. So we've done everything I think we need to before we start talking about actual combos, so maybe we should do that next. Let's switch stages, turn on command history, and teach you how to combo with Alisa. Okay, time for some Alisa combos. Something that needs to be said initially about Alisa's combos is that while she gets good damage and has some very decent launchers, a lot of the time she will struggle to sort of get a lot of convertibility for the wall on her combos, because she goes into stuff like this fly stance right here into stuff like down 3, and she has kind of limited options. So you want to have a couple of options in mind to make sure that you're able to go to the wall when you're able to. You will actually see a lot of Alisa players, even Chanel, who's the best in the world, not convert his combo to the wall and just kind of do his standard combo and then miss out on additional wall damage at the end because of the slight awkwardness of her combo game. But there's some very solid and fun stuff in there. So I think we should start by talking about your hop kick. Now, the most standard combo you will see off of this hop kick that people really seem to like to use looks like this. So what I'm going to do in this section is that I've turned on command history. I'm going to perform the combo and then try and just calmly explain how the combo works. I don't have the editing skills, I'm afraid, to put the notations on the screen as they happen. I mean, I barely know how to turn my PlayStation on and off, so I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to try and make it as clear as possible. So for the hop kick, what you see a lot is this combo. That's 65 damage, which is very, very good. It's premium for a 15-frame hop kick. Characters who specialize in combo damage off of hop kicks like Katarina will typically get 65. It's very good. I mean, some characters can't even get 59 like Kazumi, so it's very nice. Problem being that it is one of those combos that if you do this spin move, you have to end with the down 3-1. And when you do, that won't give you any wall conversions. But let's explain how the combo is done first before I show you some alternative options that I like. So you're going to do the hop kick, which is up forward 4-4. You're then going to press down back to go into full crouch, and you're going to let go of down back so that you go into the while standing state and do while standing 1, 2, 3. Which is that string. This does not need to be instant while standing. You can take your time and do this quite calmly, and it becomes a lot easier. She did used to have combos where she had to do this string instant while standing, but she doesn't anymore, so don't worry about it. Just take your time and practice it calmly and methodically, and it's going to become very easy. After that, you're going to spin with the down for 1+2, which is this move right here, used in a lot of her combos. And then after the down for 1+2, just do down 3, and then that goes into backup stance, this stance, automatically, and you just end with backup 1. So let's show the combo one more time. Alright, now if you want that 65 damage, I have a personal favorite option that I like more than this because it feels a little bit less on rails. And that combo looks like this. So that's very easy to do. You get the exact same 65, and so it's my preferred option here. So what I do instead, I don't have to go into full crouch and stuff like that to perform this. So what I do here instead is I will launch with the hop kick, the up forward 4-4. I then do 4-2, which is this very good long range mid, great for combos. I then do a down forward 1-1, which is a damage filler right there, this move, down forward 1-1. I then spin with the exact same spin move, and then I end with the exact same ender. So you still lose the wall conversion capability at the very end, but what you can do with this combo, which I think is nice, is you can, for example, spin right away after the 4-2 with using a back 2-4, like that. You can also do stuff like only doing the first part of the down forward 1 and then spin right there. So you have slight more adjustment capability early on in the combo, which I really like. But if you are out in the open, you can still do this powerful 65 damage max damage option. The other reason I prefer this combo and really like it is we're going to move on to different launchers next. And this combo also works perfectly off of down 4-2 and back 3+4, which are your those are like your three main launchers, right? So getting one combo that works consistently off of all three is really going to help you starting out with the character, because it's just easy to have your go-to option for any launcher. Makes you a lot less likely to drop. I'm going to show you one more option for the hop kick though before we move on, because a lot of people have been asking me for like new options you can do in the new season, right, because of the changes to Alisa. So let's show you a weird one, which is a little bit awkward, but it definitely works. There you go. So that's the exact same 65 damage. And this is just to highlight some changes to your combo game that have happened in the new season, because the back 3 is a spin move now. And this combo ender that I did right there, which is when I do like a one jab into that string, used to be you do down forward 1, jab, and then that ender, but now you can also use down forward 2 to initiate that sequence, and because the down forward 2 is slightly more damaging, that works out to decent damage, and you can get 65 right there. But I think that combo is really quite awkward to perform. It doesn't feel organic at all in the way the combos I've showed you previously do, so I'm gonna say stick to the more standard options. You can also get completely insane with stuff like the Sad Hound in combos now, and that can give you good wall carry and stuff, but let's leave that for now. Okay, so one more time with the recommended combo that I like. 4-2, down forward 1-1, down for 1+2, down 3-1. And let's show it off of the down forward 2, works just as well. And off of the back 3+4. See that? Very easy to understand, easy to do, works well off all the launchers. I love that combo. Should be mentioned that in the case of the hop kick and the down 4-2, you can interchange the order of the initial 4-2 and down forward 1-1, so you can do the down forward 1-1 and then the forward 2 instead, like this. But the reason I don't do that is because that does not work off of this, because the down forward 1 will whiff a lot of the time. So stick to the 4-2 for the initial hit, and that's gonna work just fine. I mean, it's such a solid and easy to do combo, so really best option in my opinion. And if you want to convert combos off of these standard launchers to the wall, then anytime you want to spin early, you can use back 2-4, which is my favorite option for that, or the standing 4. And then good wall carry options are forward 3-4-4, as well as while running 3-4. You can also run up and do back 2-4 by itself. Another option I'm going to give you before we move on to more fringe launchers that works especially well off of the hop kick, if you just want something dirt simple that has decent damage but also just very good wall carry, is just do forward 3-4-4 into another forward 3-4-4 like this. Like super easy. You get 59, and then when you get the wall, you do another one of those, and it's just a combo of that string 3 times, but it's really good. So very easy to do option that is honestly not all that bad. I like this for a combo ender. It really puts them at a comfortable spot on the wall most of the time for you to follow up with your powerful combo enders at the wall, which you have to forgo when you are ending your combo with down 3. Okay. Let's talk about counter at standing 4. For counter at standing 4, this is what I recommend. So what I did right there is I counter hit with a normal standing 4. I ran up and did back 1. And as we've learned in previous sections of this guide, back 1 recovers into full crouch. So if I just do back 1 and then 1-2, it's going to turn into while standing 1-2. I then refloat with a 1 jab, and I end with this cool damage ender that Alisa has, which is her up forward 3, 1+2. Like that. Very good damage on that, and that works quite consistently, and it breaks the floor. So you can use this as a combo ender anytime you want to break the floor. Just 4-2, 1 jab into this ender works as a damage ender for a lot of conversion options. So it's really nice. Definitely something to keep in mind. Because you spin on the first hit, your conversion capabilities are quite limited, but you can obviously do stuff like, you know, just like that if you want to try and get the wall or something. Works just fine. But let's show the normal combo one more time. My hands are getting cold here. I need to turn off the air conditioning. There you go. When in doubt, spam it out, right? That's the counter at 4 combo. Let's show you 4-4 1+2. 4-4 1+2. You can do a 1 jab and go into while standing stuff for your float, but honestly, it's easier to just do the spin right away with something like this, and then go into the ender that I showed you earlier, and you get your 62, which I think is really solid. So this is 4 forward 1 plus 2, down 4 1 plus 2, forward 2 1 jab, up forward 3 1 plus 2. So you're starting to see the individual parts of her combos reoccurring. That's how it goes with a lot of combos in Tekken. So let's show it one more time. Alright, what else? A couple more important launchers. Counter hit down 3, of course. So here you have two options. You can spin right away using your backup stance 1, or you can wait for a little bit and refloat with a while standing 4, and then you can spin with back to 4. So those are two options. I think doing the while standing 4 into back to 4 is easier if you're trying to get wall conversions, because you could do stuff like, and then that's gonna give you a wall splat, for example. But for a very easy option that isn't going to let you down, just do the 1 right away, then 4 forward 3 4 4, 60 damage, decent wall carry, very easy to understand. So that's a quick recommendation. Similar stuff when you're dealing with boot, counter hit boot 3. You can do the while standing 4 right there, and you can spin and get damage and wall carry like that. Or with the boot 3 you can also go straight into while standing 1 2 here, and that works fine. Oh, if you get in your combo, this is great that this happens so we can mention it. If you get this taunt when you're trying to perform your combos by mistake, which can happen on occasion, that is because you're trying to do the spin move back to 4, which looks like that, but you're pressing the second input to 4 too fast, turning it into back 2 plus 4, which is this taunt. So that is something that might annoy you when you're initially learning her combos. So just try and chill and maybe press the 1 and the 4, or sorry, the 2 and the 4 with the same finger. If you make sure that you're pressing them with the same finger, then you can't press them at the same time, and then you can eliminate that little inconsistency in your combo game, which I think is quite cool. But yeah, you can do that as well, and get your spin, do the running move, and get your wall carry. So that's cool as well. Any other? Yeah, okay, so the last big one that we shouldn't forget is obviously the while standing 2, because this one has a little bit of a unique combo option, which is while standing 2 3 plus 4 to go into boot stance, and then you need to do boot 3, and it's the only real way to combo off of this launcher. So you're going to be doing stuff like that, for example. And I think you're able to get that if you delay it a little bit. Let's test that actually now that we're here anyway. Yeah, there you go. So what you're doing here is while standing 2 3 plus 4, and then you're gonna quite quickly do the boot 3. When you press 3 plus 4, she automatically goes into boot, and then you do boot 3, and then you have to do a while standing move for the refloat. So you have the option of the 4 or the 1 2. And then you can spin with either back 2 4, giving you nice conversion options for the follow-up, or with down 4 1 plus 2, which will set up the max damage ender down 3 1, but won't give you the wall conversion options. So you're seeing these reoccurring themes here, right? I think that's it for the combo recommendations that I want to give you, even though it's obviously not everything and obviously not every launcher. But I think we've covered the important stuff. I should probably give you that one as well, just because it's cool. This is boot 4, and for this you can do a fully charged while standing 1 plus 2 into while standing 1 2, and then combo for a huge damage, which is an old Alisa classic, which might look advanced and difficult, but it really isn't, and it's very powerful and fun to do, to charge up that whole thing and get that in a combo. Oh, and we should also mention the new and improved backup stance 3 as well. I mentioned this in a previous section, but the way to combo off of the new and improved backup stance 3 is that you have to start running as soon as you recover, and then you want to spin with down 4 1 plus 2, and that can be difficult to time, but there is a very nice cue to let you know when to do it, because when you run with Alisa, if she's been running for a little bit, she activates her wings. They come out, they have a sound effect, and if you try and do your spin exactly when you hear that sound effect, then it's going to be perfectly timed like that, which is really great. It makes it so much easier. And then for your damage ender, you can do 4-2, 1 jab into up for 3+4, 1+2 for the damage ender that we've shown you off of different combos. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for your most important launchers. If you want a snakeage, do down for 1+2 right away. If you don't want to do instant while standing stuff. And yeah, let's transition to a wall stage and talk a little bit more about your Oki game and your wall combos, which is very important. So I'll see you after the cut. Okay, welcome to the wall, everyone. I want to teach you about how to wall combo with Alisa, which is powerful. She has some really good stuff here and a couple of great different options. If you're getting to the wall after the end of a combo, or if you're just wall splitting up close, you're going to use pretty much the same options and the same setups. I think we should start by giving you some very powerful options for your actual wall splats when you're up here, and I think a very good option to start with is the 2-4, which is your 12 frame block puncher, meaning that it's probably your fastest option here, and you can use this if your opponent lets you block something that is minus at the wall to get a powerful wall splat. You also at 13 frames have the great option of doing your standing 4, 13 frames, yeah. Which is a homing move, and homing moves are very important when they have wall splat properties, as I've mentioned many times, because when your opponent's back is to the wall, their instinct is to try and walk away from it to the side, meaning that homing moves become more powerful, can catch them and give you the wall splat, so that's very good as well. The back 3 is slightly slower, but fills the same purpose with a mid, meaning that it's also going to catch any kind of crouching option. So very, very good for these 3 options here for the wall splat. Those are really your main options. You can use the while standing 3 if you happen to find yourself in crouch, and if you happen to be in not counter hit, if you happen to be in destructive stance, a very good option that you have is the destructive 1+2, which is a homing move and wall splat move from destructive. If we're going to talk about how you're actually going to wall combo with Alisa, should we give you max damage only? No, let's give you a couple of options. So one that you see a lot of people use, because it's what she used to use back in the day, is 1-2, forward 1+2. So if we use 4 for all of our examples here to make it homogeneous in terms of damage, you can see that this is going to give us 48 in this case, which is pretty good, even though it's not massive. Another option that I really want to give you here that I think is important is 1-2, hold 2, which only gives you 46. This is the charged up version of 1-2-2. So 1-2, hold 2. And the reason I mention this as being very important is that this is the option that you will see the best Alisa players in the world use a lot at the wall, which might seem strange because it's not max damage. It's decent damage, it's very respectable, so it's not going to let you down in the damage department, but this also gives you a very nice recovery situation for when you want to follow up. And if you can sacrifice a little bit of damage for a better setup in the Oki situation, then that's usually more attractive for a high-level competitor, because a high-level competitor tends to be playing against another high-level competitor, meaning that chances to set up and deal damage against somebody who has really solid offense is difficult. So that's the reason I think this is a very good option. That, I mean, it's so easy to do and so reliable that you might actually just use this for your set and forget option for wall combos, but I think you have a couple of other options that are really powerful that I want to mention as well. The max damage options that I'm going to recommend are, first of all, the very good 4-4-3-4-4. Easy to understand, gives you the 49 here, so you can see that it's more damage. It's one of your better or max damage options. And then the other option that you have is 4-4 1+2 2, which is going to go into chainsaws. So let's show that. And there you can see that you get comparable damage on this as well. So both very good options. If you use this, you can bring your chainsaws out on the recovery still. And the reason you might want to do this is that your wall Oki with chainsaws out is really quite respectable, and so it's going to be a question of you deciding whether or not you want to apply chainsaws for the Oki, destructive for the Oki, or just use your normal standing moveset. Another option that I'm going to give you that I really like is the back 4-3. The back 4-3 here, as you can see, is quite low with its damage, but it causes a very nice little spike there, meaning that the follow-up, the Oki, is very strong. They need to recover specifically and guess, and you can go straight in for powerful stuff. If you want to do something that hits grounded, if they elect to stay grounded, a very good option that you have is the down back 1+2. Which is your missile stomp for a 20 damage hit with ground scaling right there, meaning that if you can set that up and make it pay off, then it's your most powerful option, but it is escapable. If you set something like this up and you think that your opponent is going to recover in a crouch, then a very good option that you have is the down 4-2. Sorry, down 2-4. Down 2-4 is this really powerful natural string. Let's show that's natural. And it's going to re-splat the opponent with massive wall damage. So you have some cool options here for chasing them on the ground and for hitting them back onto the wall and applying, you know, a new wall combo. So you'll do that, you'll spike them, you'll hit them with this, they'll be back on the wall, and then you can do one of your max damage options, and you've done a sequence that has basically torn away more than half of their life bar. So that's really cool. A lot of interesting options. If you do elect to recover in destructive and you want to apply this for the Oki, the main options that you have are going to be the forward 1+2 for the mid because of the massive plus frames on block, but also the very good damage on hit and the knockdown. It's, you can't really do the standard combo when you're this close to the wall. If you want to learn more about these moves, look at the destructive section of this guide. But a slightly more easy to understand option, of course, is the destructive 1. And then you are mixing that with the destructive down 1, and when you're at the wall you can also on occasion throw out the down 2 and charge that up for the full 6 hits and 30 damage, although that is on the slow side, so be a little bit careful about that. If you're predicting get up lows, up forward 1+2 from destructive is going to go over that and hit them with a very solid mid as well. And you can also hit opponents with the back to 1, which is mainly a useful destructive move at the wall in my opinion. But yeah, the stance is powerful enough at the wall that I would recommend that you consider recovering into it. If not all the time, then at least some of the time. But as you can see, a lot of your wall combo in game is really strong with Alisa, so that's not her weak spot. Her weak spot is actually getting the conversion to the wall in the first place because of her slightly awkward combo enders. So you're typically going to have to sacrifice some combo damage in the standard combo, but then you're going to make that up with your fantastic damage and setups when you're actually at the wall, which I think is really great. We're going to talk about just general Oki game for a little bit and get Lars out into the open here, because I think that sort of ties into this section a little bit. Put our opponent on the ground. The first option I look for when I'm looking for just Oki game with a character is where my stomp is, and Alisa only used to have this thing, up forward 3+4, which I think is very poor. And I don't think you should use, but now she has down back 1+2, and this is very good. So this is your standard sort of stomp, similar to a down 3+4 or down 3 for Miguel, for example. It only comes out when the opponent is grounded, but it does good damage. Excuse me, and very reliable. So I like this move. Another option that you have for chasing grounded opponents in the new season is Sad Hound. We've shown this briefly before, but Sad Hound can turn into a full combo on a grounded opponent in Season 2. I thought this was a bug that they were gonna like remove along with the 12 frame Lars Punisher that he ended up with, but it's apparently here to stay. It's apparently an intended mechanic for this character. So what you can do here is, if you're close enough to the feet, you can do Sad Hound, down forward 1, down forward 1, and then, or just 1 down forward 1. You can do 3 if you want to as well, works too. And you can get combos on grounded opponents. You can launch sleepers with this move, and it's really interesting. It's rare to get something like this in Tekken, so I think it's very interesting and definitely something you want to consider if your opponent is electing to stay on the ground rather than dealing with your mids on wake up. For mids on wake up, you don't really have, you know, one of those back three options from Miguel, for example, that are just going to give you frame advantage if they block it, so that's a little bit unfortunate. You also don't really have one of those massive mid sweeping kicks that are gonna hit both grounded opponents and crouchers, kind of like a up back four from Katarina kind of affair, so that's unfortunate. But I think for the most part, down back four and down back three is good for crouchers, or for sleepers. The missile stomp and the sad hound really good if you want to go for something slower and you want to get super decent damage, and then you're just going to have to mix that up with sort of standard mid game. One option that works quite well is just to go into the hop kick, because it's going to crush the get up 3 obviously, but the down forward 2 is not a good option for Oki, because while this is a safe mid launcher, which would typically be great in this situation, Alisa's down forward 2 is one of those awkward ones that it gets to be safe, but it actually doesn't launch crouching opponents. It only gives them a little bit of a stun right there, which is very unfortunate. So, you know, find some of your favorite mids of choice and start applying them. I use back for 3 a lot, but that's maybe not optimal, because it's actually, well, it has good damage and is mid and can counter hit some get up kicks. It's punishable on block. So your Oki game isn't massive, and you really excel when you're applying it at the wall, but it's not terrible either. I think I want to go over to a wall stage or a balcony stage for the last little part of this tutorial. So we're going to make another cut here, and I'll see you guys in a couple of seconds. In this section, I want to talk to you about all the little things that we haven't had time to talk about in previous sections. So I'm going to talk about some floor breaks and some wall bounces, and I also want to talk to you about Alisa's throw game, which we haven't mentioned yet, and then we're probably going to wrap this up. For floor breaks, if we start there, I think the no-brainer option for actually breaking the floor with Alisa is going to be back 4-3, especially in the new season where this does more damage. But this is such a fantastic all-purpose move for this, because not only does it work naturally at the end of combos, it works at the start of combos, it does great damage, and it works after a wall splat. So there's almost never a case where this option will let you down. So I just say set and forget in terms of floor break with back 4-3, but other options that you have are the back 2-1, boot stance 1-2, as well as your standard hop kick. When you're breaking the floor with this move, it's going to end your opponent with their face up head towards, which can be an awkward position for comboing. But you do have good options here, so I'm going to show you what they are. If you're doing it at the end of a combo, so let's say you're doing something like this, you can see that 4-2-3-3, which is this string, is actually going to do you very solid, even though it's a combo has preceded it, meaning that there's scaling and you're in this awkward head towards position. 4-2-3-3 works really well. We're going to talk more about that move a little bit later. But that's one option. But in some cases, you're going to end up in a situation where you've had many hits before the break, or the balcony break, or the wall break, meaning that you only really want to do one big hit or something massive to just end it downstairs, which is very common. And for Alisa, the best option that you have most of the time is you can do either forward 2-3 like that, which works really well. It's as long as there's not too many hits preceding it, it's going to work really well. So let's try and demonstrate that before we show you my actual recommended optimal option. We're going to need some better angles here. Let's try that. If we can get Lars to line up, okay. And you can see that gives you really decent damage, and it has great range, even though it can lose out if you have too many hits preceding it. The last hit can whiff. And so in that case, when you just need one big damage hit, the best option that you have is actually down to 4. Down to 4 does massive damage and is natural, and it's going to work even though it is a 2-hit move, provided that you do a pretty clutch dash before you perform it. So you're going to break the floor, dash up towards your opponent, and then do this move, and that's when it's not going to let you down. So let's see if we can show it here. It is a little bit tricky to pull off. Okay, there it is. So it worked that time. That's good. If you're not getting it to connect, if it's not registering on your combo counter, it's because you did it too late. If you get the first hit but not the second hit, it's because you didn't dash deep enough. But those are your main options for when you are breaking both floors, balconies, and walls. So I want to recommend those. And what I'm doing right now is sliding over to the wall a little bit, because I just want to mention your wall bounce move one more time in this section before we wrap our little tutorial up. And I've talked about it already in another section, but I think it needs to be mentioned here as well. I've said before that I think her wall bounce is bad, and I stand by that statement. I think it's awful, but it can be good. The string is 4-2-3-3. And it's very difficult to connect with, but you can get it on counter hit. If you counter hit with the first move of that string, with the actual 4-2 part of it, the entire thing will become natural, and you can get a massive wall bounce. When you do, your best resplat options before the ender are standing 4 and back 2-4 most of the time. So let's turn on counter hit or get some key here. That was a little bit too far. And this is exactly why I don't like wall bounce, because it's so difficult to reliably set up. Something like that is going to work really well, and you can use any combo damage ender you want to, but I think back to 4 is very solid for the resplat. So yeah, you're going to require a counter hit to get your wall bounces with the character, and because 4-2 is a 17 frame move, I don't see it happening a lot of the time, but it can definitely work. So I think that is going to wrap it up. I've talked about almost everything I wanted to go through. Only a couple of bits and pieces that were left out, but I have to sort of get back to earth and live my life at this point. I don't know how long I've been sitting here for. I really hope you enjoyed this. In conclusion, what I want to say about Alisa is that you're dealing with a kind of an orthodox defensive character who specializes in poking and movement, so she's actually very fundamental reliant. Some people will tell you that they dislike her because she's a gimmicky character or a cheap character, and I think that that is such a misunderstanding. You might get that impression because she can, you know, shoot missiles and take her head off and get chainsaws out, but really she's one of the more honest characters in the game because she has to move. Her launching game isn't very cheap, her combo game isn't very cheap, and so she's for you if you're a more patient and deliberate player and you like the sort of fundamentals of Tekken and you're good at those aspects of the game. I really recommend her to almost anybody. Like I said in the beginning, her execution is simple enough that you're not going to have to worry about difficult stuff with your hands. And she will teach you a lot about the game in terms of how you should play good Tekken. So I think it's really good. And there's also it's also the case that she's currently stronger than she's probably been in any other version. She's gone from being a low tier character in the past to being a sort of solid mid tier character who can definitely win, you know, the highest level tournaments if you want her to, if you get to that level eventually. So I can't recommend her enough, and I really hope you give her a try in Tekken 7 Season 2. Thank you so much for watching this long guide. I don't know how long, probably at least 2 hours, but we'll see what happens after I edit the whole thing. I really enjoyed making this, and I've enjoyed bringing it to you guys. These longer guides are only going to be for characters that I really love and know quite a bit about, so you can definitely request other ones, but they're not going to be something that I do, you know, across the entire cast. Yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys again very soon. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're enjoying Tekken. Next, we're probably going to be doing some more sort of theoretical content. I'm going to be combining, combining some Soul Calibur and Tekken content and trying to get into the nitty-gritty of the differences between these two games. I'm working on a script for that right now. But yeah, for like the third and last time, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye bye for now.